Chapter 38-47. Hiss. Hearing this, the hearts of the people in the hall trembled. Not only did he want to use the Sun family's power to help one of their families become the city lord, but he also wanted those people's violet gold spirit deer to belong to them as well as a third of the Sun family's property. Such a big move, he really had the determination to kill them. However, after hearing this, why did they still feel uneasy? Everyone was silent as they thought about what had happened in the past 2 days. Their faces were solemn. If the events of the past 2 days hadn't happened, perhaps they would have calmed down after hearing this arrangement. However, those people were killed in front of them and their corpses were hung on trees as a warning. After doing all this, the fear had taken over their hearts. No matter how confident the ancestor was, they still felt uneasy. Next, they all lowered their heads and listened to the ancestor's arrangement. They all began to ponder. It wasn't until the ancestor told them to disperse that they stood up and left. When the middle-aged man walked towards the courtyard, he stopped to take a look at the burned area. His mood was unusually heavy. He stood there and looked at the burned area. No one knew what he was thinking, but a dark light flashed across his eyes. He quickly walked back to the courtyard where he lived. A woman was holding 2 7- or 8-year-old children waiting for him in the courtyard. The moment they saw him, the 2 children quickly rushed forward. "Father!" The middle-aged man reached out and hugged them. "Come, let's go inside." With that, he looked at the woman and gestured for her to go inside. "Master, what the hell is going on? Did something big happen at home?" The woman worriedly asked. Because she was a woman in the inner courtyard, she didn't know much about the family's matters. The middle-aged man didn't answer. He only patted the 2 children's heads and said, "You 2 go pack up your favorite things and put them in the space treasure I gave you. Go." The 2 children looked at each other in confusion. They vaguely knew something, but they didn't really understand it. They only heard their father's words and went back to pack up their things. "Master, why is this?" The woman asked again with a slightly anxious tone. "Something big has happened in the family. It might be a disaster that will wipe out the entire family," the middle-aged man said with a serious expression. Things weren't supposed to be so troublesome, but since the ancestor came out to take over, everything has become out of control. 4 people died tonight, and all of them were powerful cultivators in the family. I don't think those people will let this go, especially since the ancestor wants to deal with them. When he said this, he looked at the woman's pale face and patted her hand. He turned around to make sure there was no one around before he said in a low voice, "I plan to take all of you out of here tonight. If we stay here any longer, I don't know what will happen." The woman didn't expect such a thing to happen. Her face turned pale as she asked in a trembling voice, Will our clan be exterminated?" Chapter 38-48. Hearing this, the woman said worriedly, "But if we leave, will the family? We can't care so much." The middle-aged man said in a deep voice, "Why should we be implicated in the disaster they caused? If we don't leave, won't those people not leave a single person alive if they want to exterminate our family? At that time, the Sun family will really have no descendants." Hearing this, the woman didn't say anything else. Humans were selfish. Now that a disaster was imminent, how could they still think about bearing the consequences with them? Moreover, the women and children in their harem didn't know how they caused this disaster. It was really not right to die for no reason. "Then I'll go and pack up now," the woman quickly said. The middle-aged man pressed her hand and said, "Don't make too much noise. Don't take anything else, just take the valuable things. After you pack up, take the children and wait for me in the room. I'll go and arrange it now. I'll leave tonight." After giving his instructions, the middle-aged man strode away. Not only did he want his wife and children to live, but he also wanted to live. Therefore, if he wanted to live, he could only leave the family. Otherwise, among the people who were killed, even if they left the lives of the women and children alive, he would still be killed. The Sun family's ancestor went out at night. He first went to the Chen family. The Chen family's patriarch was very surprised by the late-night guest. "Old Master Sun, is there an urgent matter for you to come so late at night?" The Chen family's patriarch asked. He was very puzzled. "Nephew, I have something to discuss with your father. I wonder where he is now. Can you let him come out and meet me?" The Sun family's ancestor said with a smile on his face and a kind tone. Hearing this, the Sun family's patriarch didn't dare to delay and said, "Old master, please take a seat. I'll go and invite father over." With that, he left first. When he went outside, he secretly called for a secret guard and gave a few orders before walking to his father's courtyard. About half an incense stick of time later, a round old man wearing a round brocade walked in like a smiling Buddha. He looked at the old man sitting in the hall and greeted him with a smile. "Aya, rare guest, rare guest. When I heard that you were looking for me, I didn't believe it. I didn't expect it to really be you. Brother Chen, long time no see." The Sun family's great ancestor stood up with a smile and cupped his hands in greeting. "Come, come, come. Have a seat." Old Master Chen gestured for him to take a seat. The Chen family head sat at the bottom left and looked at the two people sitting at the top. "Why are you looking for me in the middle of the night? Is there something urgent?" Old Master Chen asked, his smiling eyes sparkling with wisdom. "I'm sure it's an emergency." The Sun family ancestor nodded and said, "Brother Chen, have you heard of the purple gold spirit deer that appeared a few months ago?" Hearing this, Old Master Chen smiled and glanced at his son. Then, he said to the Sun family's ancestor, "Oh, you mean that group of people? It was said that a peak master and a dozen disciples of the High Firmament Celestial sect were killed because they coveted the purple gold spirit deer. Why did you bring this up?" Chapter 38-49. When family head Chen heard this, he couldn't help but look startled. He seemed to be shocked by his words. He originally wanted to say something, but when he saw his father's smiling eyes looking at him, he sat quietly and didn't speak. Old Master Chen shook his head and said, "Sai, it's not like you don't know me. I don't have any great ambitions in my life. As an old man, I just want to enjoy life and play with my grandson. I'm afraid I can't help you with this matter." Hearing this, family head Sun's heart sank. He said, "Brother, are you not satisfied with the conditions I put forward?" "Haha, no, no." He waved his hand and said with a smile, "I want to help, but I can't. This matter is really difficult to handle, and I can't do it." Seeing this, family head Sun looked at him deeply. He didn't want to leave like this, but asked again, "Brother, are you really not going to think about it? Even if it's not for yourself, you should think about the younger generation of the family. If nephew becomes the East City Lord, the status of the Chen family will rise, much better than it is now." Old Master Chen still shook his head and waved his hand. "There's really no way. I want to help, but I can't." He paused, looked at him, and said, "However, we have been friends for many years. Let me remind you about this matter. Think twice before you act. Don't act impulsively, or it will be too late to regret it." The Sun clan's ancestor had no reason to stay any longer. He stood up and said, "If that's the case, then I'll leave first. Thank you for your advice, but this matter doesn't allow me to back down. Goodbye." Seeing him turn and stride out, family head Chen stood up and asked, "Father, why did you refuse his request? If this matter is successful, it will be beneficial to our Chen family." Hearing this, Old Master Chen glanced at him and shook his head. "You are still young. You only see the surface of things. Your vision is not long-term enough." He was not in a hurry to go back to rest. After sitting down, he motioned for family head Sun to sit down. He took a sip of tea and said, "You don't know what kind of person old man Sun is, but do you think I don't know? If he was confident, why would he come to us? What's more, I've heard of the people he wants to deal with. They are not weak. Moreover, the people of the celestial sect didn't pursue the matter. They must be afraid. Even the people of the celestial sect are afraid of them. Are you rushing to die?" Hearing his father's words, family head Chen pondered for a while and asked, "Father, are those people really that powerful?" "I don't know if it's powerful or not, but we should be conservative. Although our Chen family isn't the top family in this city, no one dares to bully us. We should be content with what we have and not forget our roots. There's no such thing as a free lunch in this world. We should always remember that the greater the benefits, the greater the disadvantages." Family head Chen's heart trembled slightly. Looking at his father who was always smiling, he sighed softly in his heart, "I'm still far inferior to my father. No need." Old Master Chen shook his head. "No matter what it is, we will know when the time comes. Since we are not involved in their matters, there is no need to investigate them." "Yes." Family head Chen replied. Chapter 3850. The ancestor of the Sun family, who had left the Chen family, looked back with a sullen face. Then he flicked his sleeves and strode towards the Wang family. The next morning, in the small building in the middle of the lake. In the main courtyard, Feng Jiu turned over lazily. She naturally hugged the person next to her with one hand and lifted her leg directly to rest on his leg. She rubbed her head in his arms and continued to sleep. Xianyuan Mose lay still, letting her hug him and put her hands and feet on his body. However, looking at the bulging belly between the two of them, he couldn't help but carefully reach out to support it. When he gently put his hand on her belly, he felt that her belly was getting bigger and heavier day by day. In the past, he could hold her tightly in his arms, but since she was pregnant, he didn't dare to hold her in his arms like this. He also didn't wake her up. Instead, he slept with her until she had slept enough and woke up by herself. In the mansion, Qin Xian and Bai Qingcheng had already started to prepare breakfast. Except for the two masters who hadn't woken up and put their breakfast in the kitchen, the others had already put their breakfast on the table and were eating in the garden. Went to the two families overnight. Du Fan heard this and smiled, "So, they want to come to the light with us. Why don't we go to the Sun family again later? Directly kill the old man of the Sun family?" Luo Yu suggested. Lang Hua on the side drank the porridge in front of him, put down the bowl, and said, "We don't have to go to the door. They will come to the door, and I think it will be today. The longer they waited, the shorter their dreams would be. What's more, several people had died in 2 days. How could they dare to wait for another day?" Just as they were talking, a servant hurried in and reported, "Not good. A lot of people came outside and surrounded our mansion." Luo Yu rubbed his chin and said, "The Yama Lord said not to let the master know. Look, this matter has already come to our doorstep. It seems that even if we don't say anything, the master will know." Du Fan smiled and said, "Ever since we moved here, we haven't caused any big trouble. Many forces in the city have their eyes on this place, guessing our origins and identities. Since that's the case, why don't we take this opportunity to make a name for ourselves? Let them know how powerful we are." Guemo nodded and said, "Yes, I agree. If we remain silent for too long, we'll be overlooked and looked down upon. Since there's such an opportunity right now, why not make a name for ourselves? Let them fear you. Ha 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 ha. Speaking of which, the people here don't know our master's name." Luo Yu laughed and stood up immediately, "Good. I'll go meet them first." Lang Hua wiped the corner of his mouth and said, "I'll go tell the Yama Lord and the master." With that, he also stood up and left first. Early in the morning, a large group of people walked quickly on the streets of the eastern district, heading straight for the small house in the middle of the lake in the southern district. Some busybodies were surprised and followed behind to see what was going on. After hearing the news, the forces and families in the city all sent people to inquire about it. After asking around, they found out that the people in the small house in the middle of the lake had killed several people from the Sun family, angering the Sun family's ancestor. Thus, he joined forces with the Wang family to destroy the people in the small house in the middle of the lake. Chapter 38:51. A mercenary from the first mercenary group bought some things on the streets and was going to bring them back for his wife. However, he didn't expect to see the people from the Sun and Wang families leaving. After asking around, he found out that they were going to the small house in the middle of the lake. He didn't bother to buy anything and hurriedly returned to the mercenary group to report. Leader, something happened. Genie Feng was choosing his next mission when he heard the sound from outside. He looked up and saw a mercenary rushing in. What's going on? What made you lose your sense of propriety? He asked as he tidied up the things on the table. Leader, the Sun and Wang families brought their men to the South City district and surrounded the small house in the middle of the lake. The mercenary quickly said. What? He was startled and couldn't help but stand up. Those two families surrounded the small house in the middle of the lake. What are they doing? I heard that the people from the Sun family said that the people from the small house in the middle of the lake killed their family members. I don't know the details. The mercenary said. He looked at the mercenary leader and asked, Leader, should we go and take a look? Go. Call the brothers and follow me. He ordered in a deep voice and strode out. The mercenary was startled. Call the brothers? Was he planning to help? At that moment, he hurriedly turned and walked out, quickly calling the people in the mercenary group to gather. At the small house in the middle of the lake, the people from the Sun family and the Wang family surrounded it. The people in the lead were the Sun family's ancestor and another old man. Behind them were the younger generation of the two families. Sun Wei was also among them. At this moment, his face was full of viciousness. His eyes were filled with killing intent as he stared at the tightly shut small house in front of him. Anger and hatred surged in his heart. If it weren't for them, why would he be locked up in the dungeon by his family? Now that even the ancestor had decided to deal with them and even asked the Wang family's ancestor to help, he didn't believe that they couldn't deal with a mere dozen people with their combined strength. What are you doing? The city lord of the southern city district hurriedly rushed over. Before he even arrived, his voice was already filled with pressure. When he heard that something had happened at the small building in the middle of the lake, he rushed over without thinking. First, this was his territory. Since the people from the East District dared to come here and cause trouble, it was obvious that they didn't put him, the city lord of the South District, in their eyes. Secondly, he had received a favor from the people of the small house in the middle of the lake and promised to take care of them. Naturally, he couldn't let anyone bully them. City Lord Nan, this is our personal grudge. City Lord, please don't interfere. The Sun family's patriarch said in a gloomy voice as he looked at City Lord Nan, who was walking over quickly. What a joke. This is my southern district's territory, and you're telling me not to interfere? How is this possible? The South City Lord flicked his sleeves and snorted heavily. The Sun family's ancestor's eyes narrowed and a dark light flashed across his eyes. He stared at the South City Lord and said, Then does the South City Lord know that the people living in this small building not only killed my Sun family's people but also kidnapped our East City Lord? And killed him? Hearing this, not only the South City Lord, but even the surrounding people couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. The South City Lord's heart trembled. He knew the strength of the people in the small building in the middle of the lake. Although he hadn't seen all of them, he knew that they were very strong. Chapter 38:52. The Sun family's ancestor looked at the South City Lord's serious expression, and a hint of pride flashed through his eyes. Before coming out, he had already ordered the people in the mansion to kill Qi Kong in the dungeon and secretly send Qi Kang's body to the small building in the center of the lake. He believed that they had already made their move and things were developing according to his plan. As long as they attacked and found Qi Kang's body in the small building in the center of the lake, they wouldn't be able to explain themselves even if they had two mouths. They have no grudges with the East City Lord, so they wouldn't do anything to you. The South City Lord came back to his senses and said in a deep voice. He stood in front, and his sharp gaze fell on the Sun family's ancestor and the Wang family's ancestor. I respect the two of you as seniors. If you leave now, I can pretend that nothing happened. If you continue like this, I will lead the South City Guards to chase you out of the South City District. A deep voice containing a powerful pressure spread out. At this moment, he knew that regardless of whether the people in the small building in the center of the lake did it or not, he would unconditionally stand on their side and protect them. South City Lord, if you insist on protecting them, then don't blame us for being impolite. The Sun family's ancestor said in a gloomy voice, and the pressure on his body was also released. The two sides were in a stalemate, and everyone's hearts were in their mouths. It was also at this moment that a light voice with a hint of sneer came out and clearly entered everyone's ears. Oh, I was wondering who it was. So insensible to disturb people's dreams so early in the morning. Are you tired of living? The sudden voice startled everyone. They looked in the direction of the voice and saw a man in embroidered clothes sitting on the wall of the small building in the center of the lake. The man had a lazy and casual expression, but his eyes contained a fierce killing intent. The people in the small building in the center of the lake had always been mysterious. It could be said that except for a few people, no one had seen the people inside. At this moment, the person who appeared on the wall made everyone wonder who the other party was. Sitting on the wall, Luo Yu's gaze swept across everyone and landed on Sun Wei. He smiled maliciously. You're not dead yet. I wanted to let your family deal with you themselves, but it seems like you're in a hurry to die in our hands. Being stared at by Luo Yu, Sun Wei couldn't help but shudder. He braced himself and looked at Luo Yu as he fiercely said, You've killed so many of our Sun family's people. This debt must be settled today. Oh. Is that so? Luo Yu flicked his wrist and a dagger appeared in his hand. He looked at Sun Wei and said, Don't be anxious. Even if you don't want to settle the score, I'll still settle it with you. The door of the small house at the center of the lake opened, and Du Fan walked out with a fan in his hand. Hui Lang, Wei Feng, and Gu Mo also walked out. Du Fan's gaze swept past Sun Wei and descended onto the Sun clan's ancestor. After that, he looked towards the Wang clan's ancestor and said, Old Wang, this is a grudge between us and the Sun clan. If you take your people and leave now, then perhaps you can still live. Otherwise, once we attack, we won't show any mercy. Lao Wang. Who's that? Everyone looked at each other. When they saw the refined white-clothed man with a fan in his hand smiling as he looked at the Wang clan's ancestor, the corners of their mouths couldn't help but twitch. Chapter 38-53. The face of the Wang family ancestor, who was called Old Wang, suddenly turned red. He looked angrily at the smiling man in white and immediately shouted, How dare you! The voice that contained the pressure of a high god carried a sharp aura as it pounced on Du Fan like a fierce tiger, pouncing on him with the force of a thunderbolt. Du Fan continued to smile with his eyes narrowed. When he saw the pressure that could be seen with the naked eye attacking him, he waved the fan in his hand and forcefully pushed back the force of the wind. Whoosh! The sound of air flowing through the air was hit back. The Wang family ancestor didn't expect the other party to have the ability to withstand his pressure. He wasn't prepared and was hit. He took a few steps back. It wasn't a real attack, but it wasn't weak. Especially after he was hit, his expression changed slightly. He opened his mouth as if he wanted to say something, but in the end, he remained silent. He retracted the aura he had released earlier and looked at the smiling man in white with a heavy gaze. His gaze swept past the few people beside him, as well as the man sitting on the wall. These people all had a powerful aura and a calm demeanor. But looking at them, they should not be the owner of this small house in the center of the lake. If the owner was not just a subordinate, if the subordinate had such a powerful aura, then how terrifying would the master be? Thinking of this, cold sweat appeared on his forehead. He gritted his teeth and stepped forward. He cupped his hands and said, "Please don't take offense if we have offended you. My Wang family will withdraw and not participate in the personal grudge between you and the Sun family." He emphasized his personal grudge so that the other party could understand. At the same time, he lowered his attitude so that the other party wouldn't take offense. "Brother Wang, the Sun family ancestor didn't expect him to back down." His eyes narrowed in shock and anxiety. The people around also didn't expect that the attack of the man with the fan didn't anger the Wang family ancestor. Instead, he apologized and left. Looking at this scene, everyone's heart trembled. They thought to themselves, is the man in white very strong? Otherwise, why would the Wang family ancestor be so patient? "I'm sorry, I can't help you with this," the Wang family's patriarch said to the Sun family's patriarch. Immediately, he shouted, "Come back with me." As soon as he finished speaking, he immediately turned around and left. He didn't dare to stay here for long. After all, it was very embarrassing to do such a thing. Although the people of the Wang family didn't know what was going on, since the patriarch had spoken, they quickly followed and left. It was also at this moment that the mercenaries quickly arrived. Jinifeng walked up to Du Fan and the others. After saluting them, he said, "I heard that you're in trouble, so I came to see if you need any help. It's just a small problem." "Don't worry about it," Du Fan said, smiling at him. "Plotting to murder the city lord and framing him. Abusing power for personal gain. Today, the Sun family's luck has come to an end." A dignified voice sounded. The South City Lord was startled. He turned around and saw the East City Lord, Qi Kong, dressed in a brocade robe, walking over with one hand behind his back. Behind him were hundreds of guards from the East City District. How was he still alive?" The Sun family's patriarch couldn't ask this question because those people had quickly stepped forward and surrounded them. Chapter 38-54. Are you surprised that I'm not dead? Qi Kong stepped forward and looked at the Sun family's ancestor sharply. The Sun family's ancestor's face turned pale and he took a step back. Seeing this, Nanqing couldn't help but ask, "City Lord Dongqing, what's going on?" Qi Kong glanced at him and said in a deep voice, "The Sun family took you away with the intention of murdering you. Unfortunately, their evil plan didn't succeed." His voice contained the aura of spiritual power, so it was clearly heard by the people around him. They couldn't help but be in an uproar and looked at the Sun family's ancestor in disbelief. Just now, he said that the people of the small house in the center of the lake killed the city lord Dongqing. They didn't expect that it was the Sun family's ancestor who had evil intentions. "Sun Wei, where are you going?" Sun Wei, who was called out, was shocked. When he saw Qi Kong appear, he knew that things were bad. Therefore, he took advantage of the chaos and no one noticed him to escape first. But who would have thought that a hand would be placed on his shoulder at this moment, making him unable to move? He turned around and saw that it was the man who was sitting on the wall. He couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. You let go of me." He waved his hand to attack him, wanting him to let go. However, who would have thought that the other party would grab his hand and twist it, breaking his hand. Crack! Ah! A shrill scream sounded. Everyone saw that Sun Wei's hand was broken by Luo Yu. Luo Yu kicked him at the back of his knee. Sun Wei knelt forward and let out a shrill scream. When the Sun family's ancestor saw that he actually wanted to escape, his eyes turned cold. He didn't pay any attention to him and instead attacked Qi Kong. The fierce airflow contained a strong pressure and murderous aura. It spread across the sky and instantly filled the surroundings. That was the pressure of a master at the peak of the great deity stage. When the others felt the pressure spread, they suddenly felt as if a big stone was pressing on their hearts, making it difficult for them to breathe. Step back. Step back. City Lord Nan shouted in a deep voice. He waved his hand and ordered everyone to step back to avoid being hurt by the pressure. Today, the Sun family's ancestor is here. Don't think about going back alive. As Du Fan spoke, the fan in his hand flew out with a whoosh. Suddenly, it turned into a flying knife and attacked the middle-aged men of the Sun family. His strength was above those people, and the speed of his attacks was so fast that the other party had no chance to react. They only knew that when the killing intent came, they kept retreating, but they were not faster than that fatal attack. Yes. The two Sun family members who couldn't dodge in time had their throats slashed by the flying fan. Blood spurted out, and the two men groaned as their bodies fell straight to the ground. The smell of blood permeated the surroundings, causing some of the Sun family's guards to tremble. They quickly retreated, not wanting to join the battle. After all, with their strength, only death awaited them. Seeing the few people in the small house at the center of the lake move, their figures flashed out like ghosts. A powerful pressure filled the surroundings, and a murderous aura was emitted from their bodies. That scene made the South City Lord's heart tremble. He thought back to that night when they came to see him. He should be glad that he didn't make enemies with people like them. Looking at the almost one-sided massacre, his face turned solemn. He knew that the Sun family was completely finished. Chapter 38:55. I told you that things wouldn't be so simple. Look. The Sun family has kicked an iron plate. The old man shook his head and sighed. With the skills of Du Fan and the others, it was really easy to deal with the Sun family. In less than half an hour, the ground was covered with corpses. Only 7 or 8 main members of the Sun family were left. However, at this time, their faces were pale and their legs were weak. They were unable to fight at all. The Sun family's ancestor looked at the dead people on the ground with red eyes. He clenched his hands and a flame suddenly rose. With a whoosh, it formed a fire dragon and attacked Qi Kong in front of him. Qi Kong frowned. Just as he was about to make a move, he saw Du Fan rush forward. The fan in his hand instantly became bigger and blocked the fire dragon that rushed forward. At the same time, he pressed down and suppressed the flame. The two figures quickly rushed out and fought from the ground to midair. Below, Luo Yu directly destroyed Sun Wei's cultivation. At the same time, he twisted his hands behind his back and broke them. Then, he took out a rope and tied his hands together with his feet. He pulled him to a tree in front of the street and hung him upside down. You let me go. In just a short while, Sun Wei was tortured until he was on the verge of death. His spiritual power cultivation was destroyed, causing him to rapidly age. His hands were broken and he was in extreme pain. At this time, he was still hanging upside down. All the blood in his body rushed to his head, causing his pale face to turn red again. Let you go. It won't be fun if I let you go. Luo Yu smiled evilly and patted his cheek with the dagger in his hand. Who asked you to play tricks behind our backs? Do you know that you can provoke anyone but us? I don't dare anymore. Ha ha, it's too late. Luo Yu chuckled. The dagger slapped his cheek as it slid downwards. It was only when the sharp dagger was pressed against his throat that he stopped. You said that if I make a cut here and let your blood slowly drain, in the end, you will die first. Or your ancestor will die first. Hearing his words, the people around him couldn't help but shudder. His eyes were filled with shock as he looked at the handsome man in brocade clothes. This person had the appearance of an elegant young master, but the words that came out of his mouth were like that of a demon, making people tremble in fear. Don't. He said in horror, his breathing weak. City Governor Nan stepped forward and said, after all, he's from the High Firmament Celestial Sect. Won't the High Firmament Celestial Sect hate you for doing this? Otherwise, why don't we return him to the High Heaven Celestial Sect? Before he could finish his sentence, he saw Luo Yu stab the dagger in his hand into Sun Wei's throat. Sun Wei's body stiffened as his eyes widened in shock. With the dagger still in his throat, blood seeped out from the gap between the dagger and his throat, dripping to the ground. The High Firmament Immortal Sect is not strict enough. Since they are not strict enough, I will reluctantly help them solve this problem and save them the trouble. As he spoke, he pulled out the dagger that had pierced Sun Wei's throat. In an instant, blood spurted out like a fountain and sprayed all over the ground. Ah! Bang! Chapter 38-56. Ah! Some of the more cowardly people covered their eyes and exclaimed when they saw this scene. The surrounding people were also frightened when they saw this scene. No one thought that this man in white, who always had a smile on his face, would be so cruel when he attacked. The tip of the fan was suffused with a cold light as it pierced the Sun family's ancestor's chest. Blood splashed out at that moment and sprayed onto the white-clothed man's body. Drops of blood bloomed on his white clothes like red plum blossoms. The surroundings were silent. Even the Sun family's patriarch, who was pressed down, was paralyzed on the ground at this moment. He stared blankly at this scene. Dead? His family's ancestor died just like that. All gone. All dead. For this battle, the people that were carefully selected from the family were all dead. He was the only one left alive. Du Fan raised his hand and put away the fan with a whoosh. Drops of blood splashed out and flew to the surroundings. The blood on the fan made people tremble in fear. That was not a treasured fan in the hands of a noble young master, but a murder weapon. Sun family's patriarch, do you have anything else to say? Du Fan walked in front of the Sun family's patriarch and looked at him condescendingly. The Sun family's patriarch knew that even if he begged for mercy, he would die without a doubt. Therefore, he did not beg for his own life. Instead, he said, today's ending can only be said to be our Sun family's own fault. I only want to ask Commander and young master for one thing. The women and children of the Sun family were not involved in this matter. They are all innocent. I beg Commander to let them go and give them a chance to live. Hearing this, Du Fan's eyes flashed and he said, as long as they know their place, my master will not take their lives. However, if they are unwilling to give up and want to cause trouble, then they can't blame anyone. When the Sun family's patriarch heard this, his anxious heart finally calmed down. He endured the injuries on his body and stood up. At this moment, his voice was filled with spiritual energy. Sun family, listen up. The Sun family's defeat today is all due to their own fault. In the name of the Sun family's patriarch, I order the Sun family's descendants not to take revenge. Don't pursue this matter. The voice that contained spiritual force spread out. Although it didn't reach the ears of the Sun family in the Eastern District, everyone present heard it. When they heard it, they would discuss it and pass it on. Naturally, it would also reach the ears of the Sun family. Moreover, he said this to give the Sun family's descendants a chance to live. Since the other party had said such words, as long as he ordered his descendants not to take revenge, then they would be able to live. Gritting his teeth, he raised his hand and fiercely slapped the top of his head in front of everyone's eyes. However, with that one strike, there was a "pa" sound, and the faint sound of a skull cracking could be heard. The Sun family's patriarch's eyes were wide open as he stared at the sky. Then, he fell down. Their bodies fell to the ground with a bang. No one said a word, no one made a sound. They just looked at the scene in shock. They watched as the century-old family declined like this. They watched as the family's ancestor and patriarch fell just like that. No one felt that they were pitiful, and no one felt that the people of the small house at the center of the lake were cruel. This was because this was how the world worked. If they didn't die, then the people of the small house at the center of the lake would die. Chapter 38:57. Sun Wei, who was hanging on a tree and bleeding, was already motionless. It could be said that almost everyone from the Sun family had died here. Not a single one was left alive. Looking at the corpses on the ground, the South City Lord's heart was abnormally heavy. The powerful and outstanding people of the Sun family were all dead. The only ones left were some young and not outstanding people. It seemed that the Sun family would not be able to stay in this city in the future. Bring them out. The South City Lord, who was about to go forward, was startled when he heard Du Fan's words. He saw that the door to the small house in the center of the lake opened again. A middle-aged man, a woman, and 2 children were brought out. Seeing the bloody scene outside, the 2 children burst into tears and hugged their mother tightly. Who is this? How did they come out? Could it be the people from the small house in the center of the lake? Ah! I know who they are. That middle-aged man is the cousin of the Sun family's patriarch. I think he's called Sun Chengpen. The 2 children behind him are his son and daughter. That woman is his wife. But why are they here? Sun Chengpen's strength is one of the best in the Sun family. I was thinking that the Sun family's patriarch would bring people here. Why didn't I see him? So he was captured. Sun Cheng'an's expression was calm in the face of the whispers around him. He forcefully suppressed the shock and fear in his heart. He looked at the corpses on the ground, and at their miserable deaths. In the end, he could not bear to look away. Sun Chengpen. Du Fan looked at him and said in a deep voice, "Didn't your patriarch arrange for you to leave with your family just for this moment? Now that they are all dead, you can take over the Sun family. Bring their corpses back. At the same time, move out of Spirit Immortal City within half a month." Hearing this, Sun Cheng'an's heart trembled. He looked up at Du Fan in astonishment. His words. Were these words to let him smoothly take over the Sun family? With his words, even if the people in the family knew that he left the family overnight with his wife and child, they wouldn't say anything. They would only think that it was the old ancestors' arrangement. Then, it would be perfectly justifiable for him to go back and take over the Sun family. At this time, the strong people of the Sun family had already been killed, but there were still many people with average strength left. If there was chaos, it would not be so easy for him to take over the Sun family. However, with his words, no one would say anything when he returned to the Sun family, and they would all listen to his orders. What are you waiting for? Go back and restrain your Sun family. Du Fan shouted calmly. Sun Cheng'an immediately came back to his senses. He watched the group of people turn around and enter the small building in the center of the lake. After making sure that he was allowed to go back, he calmed down and shouted to the people around him. Who is willing to help me send the bodies of my family members back to the Sun family? I, Sun Cheng, am very grateful. Some people weren't willing to do something that was profitable, while others fought to do it. Especially when they saw that the people in the small building in the center of the lake had already let the Sun family go, they were even bolder. Seeing that this matter had come to an end, the South City Lord didn't leave. He followed them into the small building in the center of the lake. The leader of the first mercenary group, Jinifeng, wanted to leave, but he didn't want to hear Du Fan's voice coming from inside. Leader Jin, come in and have a drink. Chapter 38:58. When they entered, they did not see Du Fan. Instead, Leng Hua walked up and gestured for them to enter. Please come in. Young Master Leng. Genie Feng had seen him before, so he bowed. When the South City Lord saw Leng Hua, he secretly sized him up and asked, "Young master, you are?" Leng Hua smiled and said warmly, "I'm the housekeeper of the residence." Hearing this and seeing Genie Feng's respectful attitude, the South City Lord did not dare to look down on him. He nodded slightly and followed him inside. After sitting down at a stone table, the South City Lord looked at Leng Hua and said, "Young Master Leng, can you pass on a message for me? I want to see the commander." Leng Hua smiled warmly and said, "That may not be possible. It's not convenient for my master. If there's anything you need, you can tell me. I'll pass on your message." The South City Lord was about to say something when he saw Luo Yu and Qi Kong walk over and sit down at the table. Luo Yu had a blade of grass in his mouth and said, "I say, South City Lord, since you're here, just have a few drinks and chat. What trouble do you have to trouble my master? What's more, my master usually orders us to do things. She's not in charge now. If you really have something urgent, just tell us." Seeing this, the South City Lord did not say anything else. He wanted to ask who they were. Were they really not afraid of the Lingxiao celestial sect coming after them after causing such a big commotion? However, they did not look worried. Forget it, he did not mention it. Not long after, Du Fan changed out of his blood-stained robe and walked over. He said to them, "South City Lord, Commander Jean, I've already asked the kitchen to prepare a few dishes. Since you're here today, have a few drinks before you go back." When the South City Lord and Genie Feng saw him, they naturally walked forward and put a hand on Qi Kang's shoulder. When they sat down beside him, their eyes flashed. Perhaps sensing their scrutiny, Du Fan smiled. "Qi Kang is our brother." Hearing this, the two of them couldn't help but be shocked. "What? Is the East City Lord one of your people? Is it strange?" Du Fan took out a bottle of wine from the space and poured them a cup. He smiled at the two of them and said, "Not only is he one of our people, there are also many of our people in the city." Their faces were filled with disbelief. Genie Feng knew that there were people in their city, but he didn't expect that even the East City Lord was one of them. Although the South City Lord knew that they were powerful, he did not expect them to be able to infiltrate the Spirit Immortal City in such a short period of time. Just thinking about it shocked him. When Leng Hua saw them chatting, he smiled and left quietly, preparing to return to his master's side. At this moment, in the main courtyard, Fengjiu was lazily lying on a soft couch with a book covering his face. He said, "Is everything settled? I don't know what happened from beginning to end. It's just a small matter. You don't have to worry about it. I've already asked them to take care of it." As Xianyuan Mo spoke, he poured himself a cup of tea and took a sip. Seeing that she was covering her face with a book, he removed it from her face and said, "You've already been lying down for a while. Do you want to get up and walk around?" "I don't want to move. I just want to lie down," Fengjiu said lazily, raising his hand to cover his eyes. Chapter 38:59. A pair of hands held his, and a gentle voice with a smile entered his ears, soothing the worry in his heart. "Don't worry, it'll be fine," Fengjiu said gently. She looked at him and smiled. "Don't look so worried all the time. Relax, it'll be fine. Besides, there are still some geniuses who will give birth." Xianyuan Mo's replied. He didn't say anything else and just held her hand and pressed it against his cheek. The incident that happened that day seemed to have been easily forgotten. However, the Sun family had declined and moved out of the Flying Immortal City. The people of the Soaring Firmament Celestial sect didn't seem to have any reaction to Sun Wei's death. Days passed, but still, no one came to the small house in the center of the lake. The small house in the center of the lake continued to live a quiet and comfortable life. The door was still tightly shut, and very few people came out. This made the people in the city gradually stop being curious. This was because they only saw the few men who had fought with the Sun family that day. They didn't see the owner of the small house in the center of the lake. Although no one saw the owner of the small house in the center of the lake, after this battle, the families in the 4 districts of the Spirit Immortal City were extremely afraid of the small house in the center of the lake. This morning, Luo Yu, Gu Mo, and the others were exercising in the courtyard. Seeing Fan Lin sitting at the table and drinking tea, Luo Yu smiled and said, "Fan Lin. It's rare that you haven't been to the medicine pavilion these days. Come, let's spar." Hearing this, Fan Lin smiled. "I admit that I'm not your match. Go find Gu Mo or Wei Feng to spar with. Forget about them. I'll go find Leng Hua to spar with." Luo Yu grinned. After practicing a set of fist techniques, he was about to call Leng Hua to practice Tai Chi. However, before he could walk out of the courtyard, he saw Hui Lang rushing in. "Fan Lin. Quick, come with me." Hui Lang swept past Luo Yu like the wind and went straight to Fan Lin, who was sitting at the table. Without saying anything, he pulled him up and rushed to the backyard. Fan Lin ran after him and asked, "What's wrong? What happened?" "Something big has happened. Madam is about to give birth," Hui Lang said as he ran, not giving him any time to stop. Hearing this, Luo Yu and the others behind couldn't help but be startled. "Master is about to give birth? Let's go. What are you still standing there for? Let's go and take a look." The few of them didn't care about anything else and immediately rushed to the main courtyard. In the main courtyard, Xianyuan Mose looked nervously at Fengjiu on the bed. His forehead was covered with cold sweat. He held her hand and asked worriedly, "How is it? What do you think? Does it still hurt? Do you need to take some painkillers?" Fengjiu exhaled softly. When the pain in his stomach subsided, he said, "Better." Ouch! Before she could finish her sentence, she felt another wave of pain. It was the kind of pain that caused her to constrict. She couldn't help but cry out in pain, and her grip on Xianyuan Mose's hand tightened. She gritted her teeth and called out to Leng Hua, who was anxiously waiting outside, "Leng Hua, come in and help me walk. I don't want to lie down. Can you walk like this?" Xianyuan Mose asked worriedly, afraid that her legs would give way and she would fall. "It's okay. This is just the beginning. It won't come out so soon. I'll get up and walk. Maybe it'll be faster." She took a deep breath and exhaled slowly. Chapter 3860. Yama Lord, Master is right. It'll be better if she gets up and walks around. Moreover, it's just started. It won't happen so soon. As soon as Qin Xian finished speaking, she saw Yama Lord staring at her with a dark face. She felt numb and asked, What's wrong? You mean, she'll be in pain for a long time?" Xianyuan Mose's face was dark and scary. Yes. Hearing this, Xianyuan Mose pursed his lips and asked with a dark face, "How long will she be in pain? When will she give birth?" Qin Xian calmed down and said, "It's hard to say. Some people are faster, some people are slower. Some people will be in pain for a whole day." Feeling the air become cold, she immediately closed her mouth. Hiss. Fengjiu clenched his teeth and hissed. Xianyuan Mose was scared and quickly turned around. "What's wrong? What's wrong? Is it painful again?" "It's nothing." Fengjiu held his stomach with one hand and gasped for breath. Leng Shuang and Bai Qingqing helped him up. At this time, Qin Xian stepped forward and said to Bai Qingqing, "Qingqing, go to the kitchen and bring the breakfast I ordered. Master hasn't eaten this morning and needs to eat something." "All right," Bai Qingqing replied. She allowed her to step forward and then left the room. Unexpectedly, as soon as she stepped out, she saw Hui Lang hurriedly pulling Fan Lin over. "How is Madam?" How is she? Has she given birth? Hui Lang asked anxiously. As soon as Fan Lin heard this, a few black lines appeared on his forehead. He was speechless as he glanced at him. He wanted to say something, but when he saw the anxious and expectant look on Fan Lin's face, he sighed in his heart and thought to himself, I won't argue with people who don't know anything. Bai Qingqing glanced at Hui Lang and said, do you think it's so easy to give birth? She gave birth in such a short time. Why don't you give birth to one? As he spoke, he ignored Hui Lang's astonished expression and said to Fan Lin, I'll go to the kitchen to bring some food for the master. You go in and take a look. Fan Lin nodded, then shook off Hui Lang's hand that had been grabbing him. He rubbed his wrist, and when he heard Luo Yu and the others rushing over, he said to Hui Lang, tell them to wait outside the courtyard. What are they doing here? It doesn't matter whether you can help or not. Okay. Go in and take a look. Hui Lang pushed him in. In the room, Feng Jiu was supported by Leng Shuang and Qin Xian. They were about to walk around the room. Xianyuan Mose was sitting in a wheelchair and watching them closely. Seeing her deathly pale face, Xianyuan Mose's heart clenched. When he saw Fan Lin enter, he asked, Fan Lin, is there anything that can ease her pain? This. As soon as Fan Lin opened his mouth, he was interrupted by Feng Jiu. This is a necessary procedure for a woman to give birth. How can giving birth be painless? Feng Jiu panted as she spoke. She gently stroked her belly and said, this stomach hasn't gone down yet. It'll probably take a whole day. Hearing this, Xianyuan Mose's gaze was fixed on her belly. He seemed to be very dissatisfied with the two children in her belly tormenting Feng Jiu. After Fan Lin came in to take a look, he said, Master, take advantage of the time when your stomach doesn't hurt, eat what you should eat. Even if you can't eat, you have to eat some. Giving birth requires strength. I'll go get the midwife to come over and wait in the courtyard. Chapter 3861. Xianyuan Mose had never experienced this kind of thing before and didn't know much about women giving birth. At this time, when he heard Fan Lin say that he had to eat even if he couldn't eat, Xianyuan Mose's heart couldn't help but tighten. Because of nervousness, his face became pale and cold sweat appeared on his forehead. His breathing suddenly became rapid. Feng Jiu was stroking her belly and guessed that the child would be born at night when she heard the rough breathing in her ear. She was slightly startled and looked back. She couldn't help being stunned. Mose? What's wrong with you? She was anxious and quickly walked forward. Master, slow down. Qin Xian and Leng Shuang were startled and quickly supported her, fearing that she would fall down if she walked too fast. Xianyuan Mose only felt that his heart was beating very fast, as if it had lost its rhythm. His breathing also became difficult. He held his chest with one hand and took a deep breath while calming his overly nervous mood. Feng Jiu had already come to his side and put one hand on his pulse to check. With this feeling, her face couldn't help but be stunned, followed by a laugh. Ha 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 ha. Ouch. Her laughter made her stomach hurt again. She couldn't help but cry out and quickly sat down on the bed. It hurts again. Don't you have any pain relievers to eat? As soon as Xianyuan Mose saw her clutching her stomach and turning pale from the pain, his heart clenched. His nervousness and worry caused cold sweat to form on his forehead, and his face to turn pale. Seeing this, Feng Jiu felt pain and found it funny. She endured it and patted his hand, comforting him with a smile and a painful expression, Don't worry, I'm fine. Seeing that his face was still pale and the cold sweat on his forehead was still falling down, Feng Jiu couldn't help but hold back her smile. She endured the pain in her stomach and asked, Mose, what's wrong? Is there something wrong? As she spoke, she wanted to check his pulse again. Just now, when she checked his pulse, she only found out that he was too nervous. Why didn't he look better now? Instead, his face was getting paler. Xianyuan Mose sat in the wheelchair and his body trembled slightly. His face was pale as if he was enduring something. Seeing Fengjiu reach out to check his pulse, he reached out to hold her hand and said in a strange voice, I think my stomach is also in pain. Ah. Fengjiu's eyes widened in astonishment. She looked at his pale face and the cold sweat on his forehead, which was even worse than her current situation. She couldn't help but blink and look at him with a dumbfounded expression. When Qin Xin saw this, she said, could she have eaten something bad? Do you want Fan Lin to come in and take a look? She didn't eat this morning. She ate the same thing I ate last night. She didn't eat anything bad. Fengjiu took a breath and said. Because of the pain in her stomach and seeing Xianyuan Mose like this, she wanted to laugh, but she couldn't because of the pain in her stomach. The two expressions alternated, making her look extremely strange. What's wrong with the Yama Lord? Qin Xin asked in confusion. Fengjiu hissed, then looked at the pale-faced Xianyuan Mose and grinned. He's too nervous, so much so that he's suffering from psychological pain. Chapter 3862. Fengjiu rubbed his forehead and leaned against the headboard, saying, how should I put it? It means that I'm in pain and he's in pain too. Qin Xin and Ling Shuang were dumbfounded when they heard this. How could it be like this? Perhaps it was because he saw that Fengjiu was no longer in pain. Xianyuan Mose's expression eased a little, but his heart was still beating faster. His palms were a little cold, and his hand that was holding Fengjiu's hand was also sweating. Fengjiu held his hand and comforted him softly, Mose, don't worry, I'll be fine. You're in this situation because you're too nervous, so don't stay with me, go outside. Or find something else to do and distract yourself. You'll feel better. No, I'll stay here with you. Xianyuan Mose said, unwilling to leave. His woman was suffering such pain because of him. How could he leave her side at this time and let her bear such pain alone? I'm fine like this. If you're in pain, I'll be in pain with you. He took a deep breath and said this simple sentence with unconcealable affection. Master, the food is here. At this time, Bai Qingqing came in with the food and placed it on the table. When she raised her head to look at them, she saw that the two masters' faces were pale and couldn't help but be slightly surprised. Her master's complexion was not good because she was about to give birth. It was normal for her to be in pain at this time, but why was Yama Lord's face so pale? Ling Shuang, Qingqing, you two can leave. Qin Xin can stay here and take care of her. Fengjiu ordered the two of them to leave first. Yes. The two of them responded and left the room. Qin Xin scooped 2 bowls of soup for the two of them and said, drink some soup to warm your stomach first, then eat some rice. Outside, Luoyu, Du Fan, and the others were waiting outside the courtyard. Seeing Fan Lin sitting under a tree, they went up and asked, Fan Lin, don't you want to go in and take a look? Fan Lin raised his head and glanced at Luoyu, saying, I can't help much. Master has Yan Zhu by his side, and Qinqin is also inside. The midwife is already waiting in the courtyard, waiting for orders. All we can do is wait, and don't make trouble for Master. When a woman gave birth to a child, what could men do to help? What's more, there were midwives and Qin Xin to help with childbirth. It was not up to a man like him to do it. When they saw Bai Qingqing and Ling Shuang walking out, the two of them were whispering to each other as they walked. They quickly went up to them and asked, how was it? What do you think? How is Master? Master and the others are eating. Bai Qingqing replied. Don't you need to take care of him inside? Only Qin Xin is inside. Will she be able to handle it? Luoyu asked again. If she's too busy, Qin Xin will ask us to go in and help. Ling Shuang said and walked to the side and sat down. Sister, is Master's condition okay? Leng Hua asked gently, his eyes filled with worry. Don't worry. Master's fetus is in the right position, and everything has been prepared. Nothing will happen. Ling Xuan's voice softened a little, his eyes looking into the courtyard. Why do I feel like I heard you ask what happened to Master? What happened to him? Is he not feeling well? Hui Lang went up and asked. Because it was only a distance away from the courtyard, for cultivators like them, even if they didn't listen carefully, they could still faintly hear some of the voices inside. Chapter 3863. The Yama Lord is too nervous, so it's a little painful. Leng Xuan glanced at them as he spoke. Seeing that they were all in a daze, he felt that it was normal. When she heard her master talk about the Yama Lord situation, she was also stunned. After all, she had never heard of such a thing happening before. Or perhaps it had happened before, but she had never seen it before. After a long while, they regained their senses and looked at Fan Lin at the same time. They asked, is there such a situation? Under their gazes, Fan Lin involuntarily clenched his hand into a fist and coughed softly. Regardless of whether there is such a thing or not, if the Yama Lord is really like this, then such a situation is indeed happening. He looked at everyone and said, Master probably won't give birth so soon. You'd better do what you need to do. These people were all standing guard here. From time to time, they would pull him aside and ask him a few questions. He already did not know how to answer them. Master is giving birth to the little master. How can I be in the mood to do anything else? I'll stay here and wait for the little master to be born. Luo Yu said and found a place to sit down. He crossed his legs and leaned against the tree behind him. Gu Mo looked at them and said, I've been quite free recently. There's nothing else to do. I'll stay here and wait too. Me too. Me too. Seeing that none of them intended to leave and wanted to stay here until the little master was born, Fan Lin shook his head and said, all right, all of you sit here. I'll go to the kitchen to take a look and have them prepare some food for the master and the others. I'll go with you. Bai Qingqing said. All right, let's go. He nodded and left with Bai Qingqing, leaving them here to wait. At night, shrill cries of pain sounded in the small house in the middle of the lake. Everyone in the residence felt their hearts tighten as they looked nervously at the tightly shut room in the main courtyard. Outside the door, in the courtyard, Xianyuan Mose sat in a wheelchair. When he heard the shrill cries of pain coming from the room, his heart felt like it was being cut by a knife. There were several times when he wanted to rush in to be by her side, but he restrained himself. The maidservants brought in hot water in and out. The smell of blood filled the air. Basin after basin of blood was brought out from the room. His lips trembled and his face turned pale. Ah! Harder, madam, harder. Ah! The Fengzhou's shrill cries and the midwife's voice rang out in everyone's ears. Du Fan and the others were anxiously pacing back and forth outside the courtyard. Hearing their master's mournful cries, they were also restless and extremely worried. Boom! Suddenly, a loud rumble came from the sky. The pitch-black clouds surged and gathered above the small building in the center of the lake. Thunderous rumbles came from the clouds, startling everyone in Spirit Immortal City and causing them to look over in shock. What's going on? Look, why are the clouds in the sky like that? Look! On the street, the people strolling in the night market raised their heads because of the rumbling sound. Therefore, they saw the rolling clouds above the small house in the middle of the lake and didn't leave for a long time. Moreover, there were sounds of thunder coming from the clouds. Boom! Chapter 3864. Is it at the small building at the center of the lake? A family head and a few elders looked from afar and noticed that the clouds were surging towards the small building at the center of the lake. What's going on at the small building at the center of the lake? Why would it cause such a phenomenon? I knew those people were extraordinary, but I didn't know they were so extraordinary. Such a phenomenon can't be caused by ordinary people. An old man stroked his beard and said. He looked at the surging clouds in the distance and was really curious. What was going on there? Let's go and take a look. A middle-aged man said and looked at the others in the family. Even if we go there, we won't be able to get close to the small building at the center of the lake. Have you forgotten that the people inside are all extraordinary? Now that such a phenomenon has appeared, I'm afraid we'll be suspected of having ill intentions if we get close. Hearing this, the middle-aged man said, then let's not get close to the small building at the center of the lake. We'll just watch from nearby. We won't alarm the people inside. Look, many people are heading in that direction. Another person pointed at the figures flashing in the night ahead. The direction those people were heading in was precisely where the small house at the center of the lake was located. In that case, let's go and take a look. But remember, don't get close to the small building at the center of the lake. Otherwise, they'll treat you as an enemy and kill you. The old man said and rushed forward. The few people behind him quickly followed in the direction of the small building at the center of the lake. When they arrived near the small building at the center of the lake, there were already many cultivators gathered there. The cultivators who could withstand such a powerful pressure in the middle of the night could almost be said to be experts in the city. However, even though they were experienced and knowledgeable, they had never seen such a scene. An old man pondered and said to the people around him, "Look at the sky. The clouds are surging like the waves of the sea. It's very shocking. The air pressure in the air has also become a little low. The aura of the entire world seems to be changing. What's the reason for this?" Another old man stroked his beard and also pondered. He said, "It doesn't seem to be a breakthrough or something like alchemy. What's going on in the small building at the center of the lake? How could it cause such a huge commotion?" They released their divine senses and listened carefully, wanting to hear the sounds coming from the small house at the center of the lake. However, when they released their divine senses, they found that there was a barrier protecting them. Not only were their divine senses unable to probe into the small house at the center of the lake, they couldn't even hear the sounds coming from inside. Not only did they set up a defensive barrier, they also set up a soundproof barrier. A middle-aged man said as he looked at the small building at the center of the lake. He had no idea what was going on. Not far from the small house in the middle of the lake, the leader of the number 1 mercenary group, Jinifeng, was standing guard with his men. Others might not know, but he knew that Madame Xianyuan was about to give birth. It was just giving birth to a child. Why would there be such a big commotion? Boom! Another thunderous roar came from the night sky. Suddenly, the earth quaked and the mountains shook. Everyone in Spirit Immortal City felt the ground shake. It was as if the entire world was shaking, causing everyone in the city to cry out in alarm. Ah! Why is it moving? Chapter 3865. Beautiful and light heavenly music came from the clouds. Everyone was stunned. They looked up and were stunned. The night sky above the small house at the center of the lake was emitting a beautiful 7-colored light. The 7-colored light was dazzling in the clouds, and it flowed like a colored glaze. It was accompanied by heavenly music, and it shone from high above. It was as mysterious and beautiful as a fairyland. It was faintly visible that there seemed to be magpies flapping their wings and flying high in the colorful light. The light scattered below, like stars falling from the night sky, sprinkling in the small house in the center of the lake. A vision in the sky, a vision in the sky. This is an auspicious omen. It's an auspicious omen. The colorful light in the sky, the heavenly music and the magpies are celebrating together. This is not ordinary, not ordinary. Compared with the shocked people outside, Xianyuan Mose, who was waiting outside the door in the main courtyard of the small house in the center of the lake, finally felt relieved when he heard the baby crying from inside. She gave birth. She gave birth. Master gave birth. It's a boy and a girl. Both mother and child are safe. Qin Xin ran out with sweat all over her head and said excitedly to everyone. When the people waiting outside the courtyard heard this, they all breathed a sigh of relief and grinned. Xianyuan Mose had already entered the room. At this moment, sitting in the wheelchair, he wished he could stand up and walk quickly to Fengjiu's side. Adieu. He pushed the wheelchair into the room, ignoring the smell of blood in the room. He came to the bedside and looked at the pale and weak Fengjiu. When he saw her haggard appearance after giving birth, his heart ached, and he held her hand tightly with both hands. Adieu, adieu. We won't give birth in the future, we won't give birth in the future. He couldn't say anything and just called her again and again. God knows how painful it was for him to stay outside all day and listen to her pain all day. At that moment, he only thought that he would never have children again. He would never let her suffer such pain again. Fengjiu was covered in sweat, and there was a strong smell of blood on her body. When she heard Xianyuan Mose's words, a smile bloomed on her face. Zay, have you seen our child? Was she good-looking? Who do you resemble more? Her voice was a little weak. Even though she had already taken a pill, she still felt tired and powerless. It was as if her entire body was falling apart, and she didn't feel like her body was hers anymore. I haven't seen it yet, he said. Rest first, don't talk too much. The midwife wrapped up the 2 children who had been wiped clean and brought them to the bedside. She placed them beside Fengjiu and then quietly retreated. Xianyuan Mose looked at the 2 little things that were wrapped up from head to toe. For a moment, his heart softened. He looked at the 2 children and saw that they were very small. At this moment, they were sleeping with their eyes closed. Their skin was dark red and wrinkled. He couldn't see anything but felt that they were very ugly. He thought in his heart that he and Adieu were both born very well. How could the children they gave birth to be so wrinkled and dark red? Fengjiu looked at the 2 children lying beside her, and a strong sense of satisfaction and happiness welled up in her heart. These were her and Moses' children. Seeing the 2 children safely born, all the pain she had suffered before was worth it. Chapter 3866. Xianyuan Mose glanced at the 2 children and said, "It took you so long to come out. As soon as you came out, you learned to be obedient. You know not to cry and make trouble." Hearing this, Fengjiu couldn't help but smile and closed her eyes tiredly. Seeing this, Xianyuan Mose hurriedly said, "Adieu, you rest first. I'll stay here with you." Okay. No one knew whether Fengjiu heard it or not. She just responded softly and fell asleep. When Qin Xin saw this, she stepped forward and said, "Yama Lord, the smell of blood in the room is too strong. Why don't you go outside and wait for a while? I'll disperse the smell inside. Then I'll help Master wipe her body and change her clothes before you come in." As Qin Xin spoke, she bent down and picked up the 2 children. Seeing this, Xianyuan Mose asked, "Where are you going to take the 2 children?" Qin Xin paused and said, "I'll take the 2 little masters to the small room first." As soon as she finished speaking, she asked with a smile, "Yama Lord, why don't you go and accompany the 2 little masters? Come back to Master later." Hearing this, Xianyuan Mose paused for a moment. Seeing that Fengjiu had fallen asleep, he asked, "How is Adieu's situation?" "Yama Lord, don't worry. Master is fine. It's just that giving birth consumed a lot of physical strength. She is a little weak now. Let her have a good sleep. When she wakes up, she will gradually recover. However, she has to go through confinement for the next month. You have to take good care of her and don't let her get sick. Otherwise, it will be very troublesome in the future." Xianyuan Mose nodded and said, "You know what to do. Pay more attention and take good care of her. I'll come over later." "Yes." Qin Xin responded and carried the two children to the small room. Xianyuan Mose followed her to the small room first. This small house was remodeled from the neighboring house so that Fengjiu could stay in the house after she gave birth. The small house was connected to the main house so that it was convenient to take care of her. Du Fan and the others who were waiting outside could not wait any longer. After asking around and finding out that both mother and child were safe, they looked forward to seeing the two newborn babies. Can we go in and take a look? Yes. Can we go in and take a look? Hey, I want to see the little master. Let me go in first. Hui Lang said to Bai Qingqing and Ling Shuang who were guarding the door as he squeezed his way forward. Bai Qingqing and Ling Shuang also wanted to go in and see the little master, but the little master was in the side room of the main room. If they wanted to go in, they had to go through the door of the main room. The situation inside was not settled yet, so they could not go in now. Let's wait a little longer. Ling Shuang said, standing still. Why don't you carry him out for me to take a look? Hui Lang was the most impatient person. The little master that he had been waiting for so long was finally born. He could not wait to see them immediately. Ling Shuang glanced at him and did not say anything. Lang Hua saw this and smiled gently. He said to Hui Lang, then wait a little longer. But later, keep your voice down so that you don't scare the little master. I know, Hui Lang replied. Not long after, Qin Xin smiled and gestured for them to go in. They walked towards the small room and saw the Yama Lord sitting by the bed looking at the two children on the bed. They rushed forward. Ah! They're so ugly. Hui Lang went forward to take a look and instinctively shouted, why are they so small? They're black and red and wrinkled. Why aren't they white and chubby? Hui Lang stared at the two wrinkled children in astonishment. Chapter 3867. So ugly. Du Fan and the others all looked at him at the same time, their eyes shining with an unknown light. He actually dared to say that the two little masters were ugly. Did he forget to bring his brain with him when he went out? Why are you all looking at me? Hui Lang looked at them, confused. Seeing them all staring at him, especially his master, who also glanced at him coldly, he felt his hair stand on end. It's nothing. Du Fan smiled and patted him on the shoulder with an unfathomable smile. The two little masters look exactly the same. Aren't they fraternal twins? How can they be exactly the same? Luo Yu looked at them curiously and saw that the two little meatballs looked like they were made from the same mold. It was impossible to tell which was the boy and which was the girl. Yama Lord, which one is the older brother? Which one is the younger sister? Wei Feng asked curiously. The one outside is the older brother, and the one inside is the younger sister, Xianyuan Mose said, looking at the two children with a gentle gaze. Why did you wrap up their hands and bodies? Won't it be uncomfortable to sleep like this? This way, they won't scratch themselves, Fan Lin said as he looked at the two children. By the side, Fan Lin said as he looked at the two tiny babies. He smiled and said, newborn children haven't grown up yet. When they grow up, the blackish-red color of their skin will gradually fade and their appearance will also gradually change. In the room, they were still happily discussing the children. At this time, when the rainbow light and heavenly music in the night sky faded, voices of congratulations came from the sky. Congratulations to Xianyuan Monarch for having a son. Congratulations to Ghost Doctor for having a son. Congratulations to Azure Dragon Monarch for having a son. Congratulations to Phoenix Master for having a son. Congratulations to Xianyuan Monarch and Ghost Doctor for having a son. Congratulations to Azure Dragon Monarch and Phoenix Master for having a son. Voices of congratulations came from the clouds. The rainbow light and heavenly music that had faded gradually played again because of the voices from the clouds, and the light became even more dazzling. Hearing the voices of congratulations and the way they addressed them, the entire spirit immortal city and even the high firmament celestial sect were shocked. Monarch, Xianyuan Monarch and Ghost Doctor, Azure Dragon Monarch, Phoenix Master. Although they had never heard of the Xianyuan Sovereign or the Ghost Doctor, nor did they know of the Azure Dragon Sovereign or the Phoenix Master, anyone who could be called a sovereign must be the ruler of heaven and earth. The Lord of heaven and earth. When the cultivators thought of this, they all sucked in a breath of cold air and looked at the small building in the center of the lake in disbelief. The person living inside was actually the monarch of the world. Which world's monarch was he? How could the sovereigns of the various realms appear outside the world and send messages of congratulations? While everyone was still in shock, an even more shocking scene occurred that we're here to congratulate the Azure Dragon Sovereign and the Ghost Doctor on giving birth to Lin. We're here to bless and cleanse the spirit of the newborn. However, we're separated by the heavens and the earth, so we can't congratulate you in person. Please forgive us, Azure Dragon Sovereign and the Ghost Doctor. That deep and distant voice seemed to come from ancient times as it reverberated in the sky and entered everyone's ears. In the main courtyard of the small house in the center of the lake, when the crowd surrounding the two children heard the voice coming from outside, they were all startled and looked at Xianyuan Mose at the same time. Chapter 38-68. Hearing the commotion outside, Xianyuan Mose gestured for Leng Hua, who was standing next to him, to carry the two children into his arms. Then, he brought the two children to the courtyard outside in a wheelchair. Everyone has traveled thousands of miles to come and congratulate me. This sovereign thanks you all. A deep voice that contained a powerful aura and spirit energy spread out, clearly transmitting into the clouds. When it landed in the ears of the sovereigns in outer space, it shook the hearts of everyone in Spirit Immortal City. In the next moment, the golden light that gathered the blessings of the sovereign sprinkled down from the clouds with a gentle aura, accurately landing on the two children in Xianyuan Mose's arms in the small building at the center of the lake. The blessings from the immortal sovereigns would naturally extend their good fortune. In the future, these blessings would bring them endless benefits. Therefore, Xianyuan Mose naturally would not reject their blessings and spirit cleansing. The so-called blessing and spirit cleansing referred to the blessing of awakening the hidden spirit energy in the children. With the sovereigns cleansing the spirits of the two children, not to mention their innate talent, their future cultivation would be 1,000 miles. Everyone in the city stared blankly at this scene, their hearts filled with shock. Blessing and spirit cleansing. The blessing and spirit cleansing from the sovereigns of heaven and earth was something that had never been heard of in millions of years. Now, they were actually witnessing such a grand occasion. The two newborn children were blessed with such good fortune. They were truly dragons among dragons and phoenixes. Even among millions of people, there was no one like them. It was truly enviable. When the people of the high firmament celestial sect saw the scene in the sky and heard the words, they were all shocked speechless. Sovereigns. Sovereigns of heaven and earth. Sovereigns of heaven and earth had never appeared in their world. They did not expect that sovereigns would appear in their world, and they did not know about it. Duan Yunhe looked at the scene in the sky and sighed in his heart. He knew that these people had extraordinary origins, but he did not expect them to be unreachable figures like the sovereigns of heaven and earth. In the courtyard of the small building at the center of the lake, Du Fan and the others looked at the golden light that fell on the two children with smiles and joy in their eyes. How wonderful! The two young masters were blessed and cleansed by the various monarchs. That was truly a blessing. Xianyuan Mose looked at the two children in his arms. The two children, who were originally sleeping, moved their little heads comfortably, closed their eyes, and fell asleep. They even grinned from ear to ear. Seeing the two children like this, his heart softened. The way he looked at the two children was so gentle that he didn't look like a ruthless monarch. Instead, he looked like an ordinary father who loved and spoiled his children. When the golden light dissipated, he looked up at the seven-colored light and said in a low voice, "On behalf of my two children, I thank you all. As your dragon sovereign, you're exaggerating. In the clouds, several voices could be heard. They laughed and said, if that's the case, we will take our leave. As soon as they finished speaking, the seven-colored light in the night sky gradually dissipated. The churning clouds also gradually parted, and the night sky returned to its usual appearance. Only the stars twinkled in the pitch-black night. Xianyuan Mose looked at the two children in his arms and said to Qin Xian and Bai Qingqing, carry the children inside. Don't catch a cold. Yes. The two answered and walked forward to take the children and send them back to their rooms. Chapter 3869. Yes. Fan Lin responded and turned to leave. Next, the mistress was going to eat the food that could be eaten during the confinement period. Fortunately, they had already ordered someone to brew wine. And, they would first have someone use the wine to stew a spirit chicken to nourish the mistress's body. That night, because Fengjiu gave birth to a pair of twins, everyone in the Fu was excited and happy. Even though it was late at night, no one felt sleepy. The two children were sent back to their rooms to rest, and the mistress was also resting. They did not dare to disturb her, so they all went to the front courtyard to drink and celebrate. In the main courtyard, Xianyuan Mose sat by the bed and accompanied Fengjiu. He did not go to rest, but sat in the wheelchair and watched her sleep on the bed. She was exhausted. Her face was pale and she looked exhausted. Fortunately, both mother and child were safe. The next morning, Fengjiu was awakened by the sound of a baby crying. When she woke up, she saw Xianyuan Mose sitting by the bed and watching over her. The baby was crying in the small room outside. You're awake. Are you hungry? I'll have someone prepare some food for you. Xianyuan Mose said. Just as he was about to call someone in, he heard her words. Why aren't you sleeping? What's wrong with the baby? Why are you crying? Fengjiu asked. She wanted to get up, but this movement tugged at the wound on her lower body. She could not help but hiss and frown slightly. Don't move. Just lie down. Xianyuan Mose quickly pressed her down and told her to lie down and not move. He said, the baby is fine. Perhaps he's crying because he's hungry. Qin Xian and the others are taking care of him. Hearing this, Fengjiu's heart relaxed. She said, let Qin Xian and the others bring the baby over. I'll feed him. But your body right now. Xianyuan Mose was a little worried. Before the child was born, Fengjiu insisted on feeding the child herself after giving birth, so they didn't hire a wet nurse. They just raised 2 dairy sheep in the back of the mountain. After the child was born, he cried a few times and then fell asleep obediently. He didn't wake up and cry until just now. However, he was a little worried about her health. She was so weak, could she feed 2 children? Would her body not be able to take it? Fengjiu smiled. My body is recovering. I'm not as weak as you think. Let them bring the child over. Seeing this, Xianyuan Mose had no choice but to let Qin Xian and Bai Qingqing carry the child over. Master, Yama Lord. The two of them came forward with the child in their arms and bowed to them. Wah! Wah! The baby's cries were loud and clear. Quickly bring him over and let me see. Fengjiu said. She supported herself on the bed with both hands and tried to sit up. Seeing this, Xianyuan Mose quickly helped her to sit up and said, be careful. He considerately took a pillow and stuffed it behind her waist to make her more comfortable. Fengjiu took the 2 children and held them in her arms. Looking at the 2 crying children, she could not help but coax them with heartache, be good, don't cry. Mother is here. Qin Xian and Bai Qingqing left, leaving Xianyuan Mose alone in the room. Leng Xuan was guarding outside the door. When he saw the 2 of them come out, he glanced at them. Master is awake. I'll go to the kitchen and bring some food over. Qin Xian said with a smile and walked out. I'll go and help. Bai Qingqing said and followed. Chapter 3870. Fengjiu was startled. She hurriedly said to Xianyuan Mose, "You carry one." Xianyuan Mose was a little flustered as he carried a crying child. He saw Fengjiu undo her lapel and pull her clothes down slightly, revealing a patch of snow-white skin, as well as that plump. He was stunned. His burning gaze stared at her half-exposed snow-white shoulders, as well as those plump breasts that made it hard for him to look away. But before he could look enough, he saw her carrying the child to her half-exposed chest. The little fellow was originally crying with his eyes closed, but when his little mouth sucked in the sweet mother's milk, his crying suddenly stopped. He sucked like a little puppy, even making sobbing sounds. Seeing this, he had the urge to go forward and pick up the little bastard and throw him away. Fengjiu saw that the little fellow had stopped crying, then smiled. She looked up and saw Xianyuan Mose staring at the child in her arms with a dark expression. She couldn't help but burst out laughing. "Why are you staring like this?" Xianyuan Mose glanced at his son in Fengjiu's arms and said, "Ah Jiu, why don't we find a wet nurse for the two children?" As soon as he said this, Fengjiu knew what he meant. Her beautiful eyes turned, and she glared at him. She said unhappily, "You're the child's father. The child has just been born, and you already know how to be jealous of the child." Xianyuan Mose's face was slightly uncomfortable when she said this. His ears were slightly red. He said, "I'm worried that you won't be able to feed the two of them." "How can I not know you?" Fengjiu glanced at him in disbelief. Seeing that the child in her arms had been eating for a while, she handed him to Xianyuan Mose. At the same time, she took her daughter and switched sides to feed her. Xianyuan Mose took the child and saw the little fellow smacking his lips. There was a trace of milk at the corner of his mouth. A pair of black eyes blinked and stared at him. "Kid, I'm your father." As Xianyuan Mose spoke, he stared at his son in his arms. But in the next moment, his face darkened. He held the child with both hands and lifted him up. He glanced at the large wet patch on his robe. "Poochie." Ha 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 ha. When Fengjiu saw this scene, she couldn't help but laugh. When she laughed, the little guy who had eaten his fill also giggled. Seeing the mother and son laughing so happily, Xianyuan Mose's originally dark expression also eased. He sighed helplessly and said, "This brat really needs to be taught a lesson." Fengjiu laughed for a while and calmed down, but the corners of his mouth were still upturned. He said, "Quickly let Qin Xian and the others come in to take care of the children. You, go take a bath first, then go to sleep. I don't need to stand guard here anymore." She was not clean yet, so she naturally couldn't let him sleep in the same bed with her. Moreover, he didn't rest while standing guard here. Seeing that he was a little tired, she naturally hoped that he could go to sleep first. "I'm not tired. I'll take a bath first and then come back." As Xianyuan Mose spoke, he placed the child by the side of the bed, then pushed Luan Lin out. When they were outside, he said to Ling Shuang, who was outside the door, "Go in and take care of him." "Yes." Ling Shuang responded and then went inside. At this time, in front of the door of the small house in the middle of the lake, many family heads came in person with congratulatory gifts. After one of them knocked on the door of the small house in the middle of the lake, he waited nervously. Chapter 3871. Seeing Leng Hua, the crowd smiled and said, "We know that your esteemed mistress has just given birth to Lin, so we specially came here to congratulate you. We hope you'll accept it." Hearing this, Leng Hua smiled gently and said, "Thank you for your kindness. However, my mistress has instructed that we won't accept any gifts. I will convey your intentions to my mistress. These are just some things to nourish the body. They're not expensive gifts. Since we brought them here, we don't intend to take them back." We hope you'll accept them. One of the middle-aged men said. He didn't hand the things over to Leng Hua. Instead, he placed them in front of the door, cupped his hands in salute and turned to leave. It was as if he was afraid that if he was too slow, Leng Hua would have to take the things back. When the others saw this, they also put down the things and hurriedly left. Leng Hua was slightly surprised. Looking at the mountain-like pile of gifts, he couldn't help but shake his head and laugh. Forget it. Since they've already brought the things here, he'll just take them in. Thus, after the crowd left, he flicked his sleeve and put all the things into his space. Then, he closed the door and walked inside. Leng Hua, who's outside? Luo Yu asked, tossing a red fruit in his hand. When he arrived in front of Leng Hua, he handed the fruit to him. I'm not eating. You can have it. Leng Hua said with a warm smile, some of the family heads in the city sent gifts to congratulate you on giving birth to a little master. There are so many of them. I'm just about to open them and see what's inside. Oh. I see. Then I'll go with you. Let's see what they've brought. Luo Yu took a bite of the fruit and motioned for him to go to the front yard. The two of them went to the front hall and opened the gifts to check. Seeing that most of them were nourishing herbs for nourishing the body, they tidied up the things and went to the backyard. What a fragrant wine. Luo Yu smelled the wine as soon as he entered the yard. He took a few deep breaths and hurriedly asked, there's also the fragrance of spirit chicken in the wine. What's so delicious about it? It's wine chicken soup for the master. Qin Xin came out with the things and smiled, why are you here? Wine chicken soup. Is there anything else? Give me half a bowl to try. Luo Yu grinned and said greedily. Yes, you can eat in the kitchen if you want. Qin Xin chuckled. This wine chicken soup is naturally very delicious. It's specially made for women in confinement. I also made crucian carp soup. Do you want to have a bowl too? Crucian carp soup. Is that also good for the body? Luo Yu asked curiously. Qin Xin pursed her lips into a smile and said, there's a saying in medical books, women don't have enough breast milk. Drinking crucian carp soup can help. Cough cough. Luo Yu choked on his saliva and his face turned red. He quickly waved his hand. No, I don't need it. I don't want to drink the chicken soup. When Leng Hua heard their conversation, the smile on his face deepened. He looked at Qin Xin and said, just now, the people in the city sent some nourishing things. I was just about to give them to you and pick some for master to eat. Oh. What are they? Now master is eating nutritious and nourishing things. Some of the herbs can't be used. Qin Xin said and followed them to the stone table in the yard with the plate in her hand. Chapter 3872. He was here just now, but master asked him to rest in the back room. Qin Xin said. Hearing this, Luo Yu asked again, where are the two little masters? They should be asleep in master's room. Seeing this, Luo Yu asked again, will I disturb master's rest if I go in now? Qin Xin smiled, if you want to see master, it's better to wait a few days. Master needs to rest more now and recuperate well. Okay then. Luo Yu said and did not go forward. Instead, he turned back and sat down at the table. Qin Xin put away the things and said, then I'll go to the kitchen first. Are my sister and the others waiting on master in his room? Leng Hua asked. Yes, they are all helping to take care of the little masters. Qin Xin smiled and walked out. Since there was nothing to do, Luo Yu thought of something. He looked at Leng Hua and grinned, Leng Hua, since there is nothing to do recently, why don't we arrange a celebration tonight? After all, it's such a joyous occasion for master to give birth to a little master. We can't just drink a few glasses of wine like we did last night, right? Hearing this, Leng Hua nodded, yes, that's a good idea. I'll tell Master or Yama Lord about it later. We don't have many friends here, so we can invite them to join in the fun. You mean Duan Yunhe and Ji Feng? Luo Yu asked. Yes, other than them, we don't have any friends, right? Hearing this, Luo Yu touched his chin and thought for a while, okay, then I'll go and prepare first. Since we want to invite them, we have to do it in advance. I'll go and arrange it now. You can tell Master and Yama Lord about it later. They should agree. Okay. Leng Hua responded. After watching him leave, he walked towards the main house and knocked on the door. Master. Fengjiu, who was watching the two sleeping children in the room, heard Leng Hua's voice outside. He gestured to the Leng Xuan beside the bed. Let him in. Yes. Leng Xuan replied softly, so as not to disturb the sleeping young master. After Leng Xuan went out, Bai Qingqing went forward to put down the bed curtains. After all, her mistress was only wearing an inner robe and her black hair was loose. She could not let them see her mistress in this state. Leng Xuan came to the outer room. After opening the door, she looked at her brother and said softly, the little master is sleeping. Keep your voice down. Don't startle them. Okay. Leng Hua responded and followed her in. After entering, Leng Hua did not raise his head. Instead, he bowed slightly and said, Master, the various families in the city sent some nourishing gifts to congratulate Master on giving birth to Lin. I didn't want to accept their gifts, but they left after putting them down. So I put the gifts away and gave them to Qin Xian to take care of. I asked her to pick something for Master to eat to nourish Master's body. Hearing this, Feng Jiu replied, all right, I'll take it then. It's nothing. Leng Hua said, there's one more thing. What is it? Feng Jiu asked lazily. We want to hold a banquet tonight to celebrate the birth of the little master. We want to invite Duan Yunhe and Ji Feng. You can arrange these things. There's no need to ask. Go. Let's celebrate and make it lively. Feng Jiu said with a smile. He would let them arrange it themselves. Chapter 3873. Luo Yu and the rest arranged everything, and the residence was decorated with lanterns and colored banners. Originally, Luo Yu and the rest had chosen to celebrate today, but when they talked to the others, they said that it would be better to celebrate together on the third day of the Lunar New Year. However, after thinking about it, they felt that tomorrow was the third day of the Lunar New Year, and they could celebrate together. As such, there was this lively banquet today. Leader, someone sent an invitation over. The mercenary handed an exquisite invitation to Ji Feng, and looked at it curiously. Leader, who did they send the invitation to? Ji Feng took a look at the exquisite invitation and was slightly surprised. He reached out to erase the seal and took out the invitation. After taking a look, he couldn't help but be startled. It's an invitation from the small house in the middle of the lake. Ah! An invitation from the small villa in the middle of the lake. The mercenary couldn't help but move forward. Leader, why did they send you an invitation? Ji Feng closed the invitation and glanced at him. Go do what you need to do. As he spoke, he strode out. He didn't expect them to send him an invitation to celebrate. However, since the other party sent him an invitation, he had to prepare something as a congratulatory gift. But, what should he give? On the other side, Duan Yunhe also received the invitation. When he saw the invitation, he was also surprised. He didn't expect them to invite him to celebrate. Therefore, he began to prepare. After choosing a gift, he left the sect and went to the small building in the middle of the lake. In the evening, Xianyuan Mose came to the master bedroom and saw Fengjiu playing with the two children. The two children were lying next to her and giggling. Hearing the mother and children's laughter, his gaze softened. Mose? You're here. Come and see, these two children are so beautiful when they laugh. Fengjiu called out to him as she played with the children. Xianyuan Mose went forward and saw that the cloth wrapped around the two children had been changed to two different colors, one white and one pink. Clearly, it was to distinguish them. However, even if it wasn't distinguished, the children could still distinguish them. This was because there was a small red dot between the girl's eyebrows. It was just that it was hard to see because of her dark red skin. Why aren't you resting? He came to the bedside and looked at her. With one hand, he carried his daughter who was sleeping inside. He lowered his head and gently touched her little lips with his finger. He saw her break into a smile. Seeing this, Xianyuan Mose also smiled and praised, "My daughter's eyes are like yours. They are so beautiful. She will definitely be a beauty when she grows up." Upon hearing this, Fengjiu pursed his lips and smiled. Of course our children won't be bad. However, the children are already born. Have you thought of a name for them? What should we name it? Xianyuan Mose looked up at her and said, "I've already decided. Let's call our son Mu Chen and our daughter Mu Yu." Hearing these two names, Fengjiu was startled. Mu Chen. Mu Yu. She looked at him with a complicated gaze and asked, "Why do you want to name them like this?" Xianyuan Mose looked at her and said, "Although I haven't said or mentioned anything, I have always remembered that Mo Chen died for us. If it wasn't for him, how could we have such a happy life now?" Mu means to miss and admire, and Chen means him. I hope that in the future, the children will also know that there was such a person who died for us. Chapter 3874. Hearing this, Fengjiu softly called out, "Mu Chen, Mu Yu. Xianyuan Mu Chen, Xianyuan Mu Yu." She looked at him and revealed a gentle smile. These names are really good. Xianyuan Mose held her hand with one hand and the child with the other. "Ah Jiu, Mo Chen doesn't have any children. I want our children to acknowledge him as their adoptive father. What do you think?" Hearing this, Fengjiu's heart trembled. She didn't think that he would make such an arrangement. For a moment, she was speechless. Mo Chen died for them. She had always felt guilty and owed him. If their children could acknowledge him as their adoptive father, that would be the best. Okay. Her eyes reddened as she nodded. Xianyuan Mose let go of her hand and touched her face instead. "You're in confinement, so don't be too emotional. Rest well and don't sit too often. Just lie down more often." As he spoke, he took the other child from her arms and said, "You should sleep. I'll take the children to the outer room." "N." Fengjiu responded. She watched as he called for Ling Shuang to come in and help carry the child away. Only then did she lie down and close her eyes. Although cultivators like them didn't have to go through confinement like ordinary women, it was better to take care of their bodies as much as possible. This way, they wouldn't be left with any lingering illnesses in the future. Perhaps it was because the matter on her mind had been settled, but she felt very relaxed. Not long after, she fell into a deep slumber. As the night fell, laughter filled the small house in the middle of the lake. Delicious wine and food were placed on the table. Du Fan and the others sat on the side and rested. Luo Yu grinned and said, "Today's wine is a good wine that I've kept for a long time. Later, you should all drink a few more cups. I'm only willing to let you drink because it's a joyous occasion like the little master's birth." Ha 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 ha. All right. We'll definitely drink a lot later. But before we get drunk, you can't lie down. Du Fan laughed and patted his shoulder. With my alcohol tolerance, how could I lie down? Just wait and see. Tonight, even if all of you are dead drunk, I will still be sitting sober. Luo Yu said with a smile. He glanced outside and said, "Why isn't Chi Kong here yet? Does he have so many things to do in the city lord mansion?" Gu Mo glanced at the sky and said, "The sky is dark now. It's still early. At this moment, Leng Hua, who was walking towards the front yard, heard a knock on the door and walked towards it. The servant had already invited the person in. When he saw that it was Genie Feng, he smiled and went up to him. "Commander Jean, please come in." "Young Master Leng." Genie Feng cupped his fists and bowed. As he followed him inside, he said, "I didn't expect that everyone would send me an invitation. This Jean is really flattered." Leng Hua smiled warmly and said, "Commander Jean is a man of honor and has a relationship with us. Now that the City Lord Mansion is celebrating, we naturally hope to share in the joy." As the two spoke, they arrived at the front yard. Looking at the people in the yard, Genie Feng bowed to them and then handed something to Leng Hua. "This is a small gift to congratulate Madame Xianyuan on giving birth to Lin He. Commander Jean is too kind. I thank Commander Jean on behalf of my master." Leng Hua accepted the gift and stored it in his space. Chapter 3875. When Genie Feng heard this, he hurriedly stepped forward and said, "It's hard to refuse such great hospitality. I won't leave until I'm drunk. Looks like we're late. You've already served the wine and dishes." A laughing voice rang out. Everyone turned around and saw Qi Kong and Duan Yunhe walking over together. When Du Fan saw them, he smiled and said, "We've been waiting for you guys. The wine today is from Luo Yu's collection." "Then I'm in for a treat today," Duan Yunhe said with a smile. He took out a congratulatory gift and said, "Here are some small things." "Thank you." Leng Hua took the gift and stored it in her space. She said, "My mistress is still in confinement, so we can make ourselves comfortable. Please take a seat." Thus, everyone sat down and started chatting. They poured wine and picked up food to eat. They were lively in the front courtyard while Xianyuan Mose accompanied the two children and Fengjiu in the back courtyard. Leng Hua and the others waited on them in the courtyard. That night, they drank until midnight before everyone supported each other to rest. Duan Yunhe and Genie Feng also stayed in the small house at the center of the lake because they were drunk. They only left at noon the next day. The days quietly passed in a warm atmosphere. In the blink of an eye, 3 months had passed. In the main courtyard, Grey Wolf was carefully carrying a white and tender child. With a curious expression, he said, "Strange, this little master was so wrinkled when he was just born. How did he grow so white and tender in just 3 months? How did he grow so cute? Look at her, she's so beautiful." He couldn't help but reach out a hand to touch the child's face. It was smooth and tender and had the unique milky scent of a baby. His heart melted at the sight of it. Wah! Suddenly, the child started crying. When she started crying, Hui Lang panicked. He anxiously coaxed her. "Don't cry, don't cry. I won't touch you." However, as soon as he finished speaking, his body couldn't help but stiffen. His chest was warm and moist, causing him to stand there dumbfounded. "Ha ha 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 ha. Look, the little mistress peed all over him again." Luo Yu slapped his thigh and laughed heartily. Seeing Hui Lang's frozen expression, he gloated. Bai Qingqing smiled and walked forward. "Let me help the little master change." She took the child from Grey Wolf's hands and carried him into the house. Ha ha ha! Little Muyu, who was being held in Leng Hua's arms, giggled when she heard everyone laughing. The little child's bright eyes narrowed into a line. No matter how one looked at her, she was adorable. "Little Yu is smiling, look," Leng Hua warmly said. When he saw his little master smiling, he couldn't help but smile as well. The 3-month-old children were fair and tender. They had already grown up and would giggle when they were teased. Therefore, everyone liked to play with them when they had nothing to do. Fengjiu and Xianyuan Mose were in the room. She was pricking the acupuncture points on his feet with silver needles and asked, "How is it? do you feel anything? No. Xianyuan Mo said. He looked at his legs with deep eyes. Hearing this, Fengjiu sighed softly in her heart. She smiled and said, "It's okay. There will always be a way. Later, I'll try another prescription." Xianyuan Mose looked at her and said, "It's okay. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. I'm fine like this." Fengjiu put away the silver needles and sat next to him. "Mose, I want to go to the Myriad Buddha's sect." Chapter 3876. Fengjiu said with a smile, "The child has been born, the confinement period is over, and her body has recovered well, so I plan to leave after a few days. However, the child is still young, so I want to take him with me. Moreover, we have always been together more than apart, so this time I hope you can also accompany me." "Well, the child and I will accompany you." Xianyuan Mose showed a smile, held her hand and said, "At that time, we will settle down in a nearby place, and you can do what you want to do." "Well, then I will tell them later and let them prepare." Fengjiu stood up with a smile, pushed the wheelchair and said, "Let's go and see the child." The two went out, and when they came outside, they saw that they were all surrounding the two children. After a while, one child was hugged by the other, and the child did not cry or make a fuss. Instead, they giggled. "I know it is you, without looking." Xianyuan Mose came out of the door, and after seeing this scene, the corners of his mouth slightly raised. Thinking about it, only you, who love to laugh, would let them fight to hug her without crying or making a fuss. If it was Chen, he would have cried long ago. "Master, do you think the little masters have a problem with me? Why do they urinate on me every time I hug them?" Hui Lang came to Xianyuan Mose with a bitter face and said. Xianyuan Mose glanced at him, and said with a low and magnetic voice and a smile, "That is because they take special care of you." "Ha ha ha ha, yes, it is because the little masters take special care of you." Luo Yu at one side laughed, winked at Hui Lang and said, "I remember that when the little masters were born, the first sentence you said was that they were very ugly." "Ha ha ha, wait and see. When they grow up, I will tell them about it." Hearing this, Hui Lang immediately cried, "Ah! Don't! Luo Yu, are you still my good brother? At that time, I didn't mean to." "Yes, yes, yes. You accidentally said what you were thinking." I know." Luo Yu nodded cooperatively, and couldn't help but grin. Looking at Hui Lang's anxious face, everyone laughed. "Come, let me hold him," Fengjiu said as he walked in front of Fan Lin and took the child from his arms. Haha. As soon as the child was in her arms, it seemed to smell the familiar scent on her body. Immediately, it giggled happily. Its little face rubbed against Fengjiu's arms like a kitten. "Master, why are the spiritual auras of the two little masters so abundant? They haven't cultivated yet, but the aura on their bodies seems to be flowing in their bodies." Many people were puzzled. Logically speaking, shouldn't he wait until he was cultivating before drawing qi into his body? But the spiritual auras of the two little masters seemed to be innate and extremely pure, which really puzzled him. Fengjiu smiled slightly and hugged her daughter. "They have innate bodies. Before they were born, they had already absorbed the spiritual aura in my body, so they can't be compared to ordinary children." Saying this, her voice paused, and she smiled. "Moreover, they have received the blessings and cleansing of their spirits from the various monarchs. In the future, their cultivation will advance by leaps and bounds." Chapter 3877. By the way, you should arrange the things at hand. We'll set off for the Myriad Buddha's sect in a few days, Fengjiu said. Hearing this, everyone was stunned. They looked at each other and asked, "Master, where's the Myriad Buddha's sect?" They had lived here for almost a year. Were they going to leave now? Let Qi Kong tell you the details later. Fan Lin nodded and said, well, I'll go back and arrange the things in the medicine tower. He paused and asked, Master, will you come back here in the future? Maybe, maybe not, but the Spirit Immortal City is a big town, and the Lingxiao Celestial Sect is here. Maybe I'll have a chance to come back in the future. Whether they would come back or not depended on whether it was necessary. They had planned to stay here for a while, but now the people here knew their identities, and it was inconvenient for them to go in and out. It didn't matter whether they stayed or not. Hearing this, everyone nodded and said, well, let's go and prepare. Qingqing, you and Qin Xian go out and buy some things that the children need. There are many things in this city that can't be found anywhere else. Buy more things that you need, in case you need them on the way. Fengjiu told them to go out. All right. The two of them replied. Fengjiu and Xianyuan Mose were playing with the children in the yard, while the others went to arrange the things at hand. In the East City Lord's mansion, many people came to the mansion to tell Qi Kong about Fengjiu's idea. Qi Kong pondered for a while and said, since we're going to leave, I'll have to leave as the city lord. How about this? Let's go back and discuss with our master who will take over the city lord's mansion. Many people looked at him and asked, do you have a candidate? Qi Kong smiled and said, I prefer Genie Feng, the leader of the first mercenary group. If he takes over the East City Lord's mansion, it will be more convenient for us to do things in the future. In that case, let's go. Let's go back and talk to our master. Thus, the two of them headed towards the small building in the center of the lake. In the main courtyard, when Qi Kong told Fengjiu his idea, Fengjiu nodded and said, all right, we'll do as you say. However, if he takes over the position of East City Lord, I'm sure the people in the city won't accept it. Therefore, ask the people from the High Firmament Celestial Sect to go over and arrange this matter. All right, then I'll do it now. Qi Kong said, bowed, and retreated. Wow! After Qi Kong left, the child burst into tears. Xianyuan Mose, who was standing to the side, saw his daughter crying as well as his son in Fengjiu's arms. He said, maybe he's hungry. Come, give them to me. I'll carry them into the room to feed them. She stepped forward to take the children and carried both of them into the room. After seeing her enter the room, Xianyuan Mose looked at Qin Xian in the courtyard and asked, what stew did you make for her today? Qin Xian replied, today's stew is spiritual pig trotter soup. However, our master thought it was a little greasy, so he prepared some lighter stew. Go to the kitchen and bring some here. Xianyuan Mose said and motioned for her to go to the kitchen and bring some stew. Yes. Qin bent her knees and bowed, then left. Chapter 3878. Xianyuan Mose came in and saw her sitting by the bed with the two children in her arms. She had a smile on her face, and her eyes were gentle and loving. His heart softened. This was his wife and children. They were the people he wanted to protect. They were the most important family in his life. Looking at them and thinking about the black lotus of destruction that was now in the hands of the Devil Lord, he narrowed his eyes and the smile on his face gradually disappeared. He placed one hand on his knees, and his eyes were unreadable. Fengjiu put the two children on the bed. Seeing him staring at her feet by the door, she couldn't help but feel her heart ache. She walked forward and came to his side. What's wrong? Nothing, Xianyuan Mose said as he held her hand and looked inside. Are the children asleep? Yes, they are asleep. Fengjiu smiled and said, the two of them are just like Hao or when he was young. They also sleep after eating. Speaking of which, we haven't seen Hao for a long time. I wonder how he is now. Thinking of Hao who had been by her side for 5 years, Fengjiu couldn't help but miss him. Back then, she had let him go back with his biological parents. It had been more than a year now. That child was already 6 years old. She wondered how much taller he had grown. Don't worry. He is going back to his biological parents. They will treat him very well. Xianyuan Mo said to Fengjiu, I asked Qin Xian to bring you some stew. Drink some. Upon hearing this, Fengjiu put her hand on her forehead and said helplessly, drink again? Look at how round my waist has become after my confinement. Xianyuan Mo's lips curved slightly. He stroked her waist with one hand and said, no, this is also very good. I like it. Fengjiu saw him stroking her waist with one hand and saying such words. She glanced at him with her beautiful eyes and said, don't be so naughty. Yama Lord, Master, the stew is here. In the courtyard outside, Qin Xian put the stew on the table. The two people in the room looked at each other, pursed their lips and smiled, then walked out. In the High Firmament Celestial sect, everyone had gathered in the main hall because of Qi Kang's arrival. Only a few people in the High Firmament Celestial sect had seen him before. Since he was with the sovereign, they couldn't help but size him up. Duan Yun he looked at Qi Kang and said, Sect Master is currently in closed-door cultivation so he can't come out. If there's anything you need, you can tell us. Everyone here is an elder and a peak master of the High Firmament Celestial sect. Upon hearing this, Qi Kang nodded and said, there's only one reason I'm here today. I'd like to pass the position of East City Governor to the leader of the first mercenary group. However, if he takes over my position halfway, the people in the city will be dissatisfied. Therefore, I hope the High Firmament Celestial sect can make the arrangements. Hearing this, everyone was slightly surprised and couldn't help but look at each other. One of the elders asked, what about you? Why aren't you the East City Lord anymore? Aren't you doing well? We're preparing to leave and probably won't be back in a short period of time. Therefore, I can't continue to be the East City Governor. Qi Kang said in a deep voice. He looked at everyone and said, the quality of a city governor and his ability are related to everything in the city. Therefore, I've chosen Jin Yifeng to replace him. He paused and said, this matter was approved by my master. I hope you can make the appropriate arrangements. Chapter 3879. They chatted for a while in the main hall before the great elder asked Duan Yunhe to send him off. As they walked out, Duan Yunhe asked, where are you going? I've been out for many years and know many places. If you need my help, just let me know. Qi Kang smiled and said, if we need your help, we won't stand on ceremony. Alright, I should go back now. You don't have to send me off. Goodbye. I'll probably go over tomorrow to help you deal with the handover of the East City Lord. See you tomorrow. Duan Yunhe said as he sent him to the sect gate. Qi Kang responded, then gathered his qi and rode on his sword, heading towards Spirit Immortal City. He still had to inform the first mercenary group so that Jin Yifeng could be prepared. When he arrived at the first mercenary group from the High Firmament Immortal sect, the sky was already dark. Just as he was about to ask the mercenaries to go in and inform them, he saw a mercenary carrying wine walk over. When the mercenaries saw him, he was startled and quickly walked over. East City Lord? Are you looking for our leader? The mercenary asked. He was surprised. He didn't expect such a famous person to come to their mercenary group. Yes. Is your leader here? Qi Kang asked. Yes, yes. The leader is inside. I'll bring you in. The mercenary said as he led the way. When the mercenaries in the mercenary group saw Qi Kang, they immediately rushed to inform their leader. A mercenary walked over to Jin Yifeng and said anxiously, Leader, the East City Lord is here. Jin Yifeng was startled. He looked up and saw that the person walking behind the mercenary was Qi Kang. He immediately stood up and greeted him. Why is the East City Lord here? Is there something you need? He asked as he invited him in and sat down. Qi Kang nodded at him and sat down. When he saw that the mercenaries had left, he said, I'm here today because I have something to tell you. Please sit. Ji Feng looked at him with a serious expression. Why did he come here so late at night? Furthermore, he came here personally. Was there something important? It's like this. We're preparing to leave, so we plan to let you take over the position of City Lord of the East District. Upon hearing this, Ji Feng was slightly surprised. You're leaving? Was he not planning to come back? You want to go too? Yes, wherever my master goes, we will follow. Qi Kong looked at him and said, it would be best if you could take over the position of City Lord of the Eastern District. Ji Feng waved his hand and said, no, no. If I take over, the aristocratic families in the city will not accept it. After all, I am someone who lost the election. How can I be qualified to take over the position of City Lord of the East District? This is not acceptable. I've already gone to the Lingxiao Celestial Sect. They will make the arrangements. With them and my master's instructions, no one in the city will dare to have any opinions about you. Qi Kong smiled and looked at him. We've known each other for some time. We know your character. We made the decision after careful consideration to let you take over the position of City Lord of the East District. We believe that you will not disappoint us. Chapter 3880. After sitting at Ji Feng's place for a while and chatting with him about the current situation in the East City Lord Mansion, Qi Kong got up and left. After sending Qi Kong off, Ji Feng stood there for a long time without moving, but he felt a little emotional. He had gotten to know them by a freak combination of factors. He did not expect that they would give up the position of the East City Lord just like that. After returning to the small house in the center of the lake, Qi Kong reported the matter to Fengjiu and returned to the East City Lord Mansion. At noon the next day, the people from the High Firmament Celestial Sect arrived. When the news of Ji Feng taking over the position of the East City Lord spread, the entire Spirit Immortal City was shocked. East City Lord Qi Kong had only taken over for a short period of time, so why did he give up so quickly? What was the reason? They guessed, but no one knew that they were going to leave. After all, they had only stayed here for a short period of time, and there were 2 children who were only a few months old in the mansion. No one would expect them to leave at this time. However, no one objected to Ji Feng taking over other than discussing it. The strength of Ji Feng, the leader of the number 1 mercenary group, was obvious to all. Moreover, this matter was personally announced by the High Firmament Celestial Sect and the current Eastern City Lord, Qi Kong, so no one would say anything. While the East City Lord Mansion was busy with the handover, in the small house in the center of the lake, Fengjiu and Xianyuan Mose were idle all day, playing with their children and enjoying the time together as a family. Especially as they watched their 2 children grow up day by day and become more beautiful day by day, their hearts were filled with boundless pride and satisfaction. After settling the matters in the Spirit Immortal City, they were not in a hurry to leave. Instead, they stayed for another half a month before preparing to leave. Early in the morning, before the sky was bright, a luxurious carriage quietly went out of the city gate. Just like when they came, they left quietly and did not disturb anyone. When the people in the Spirit Immortal City learned that the people in the small house in the center of the lake had left, another half a month had passed. Apart from the initial discussion, gradually, as the days passed, the people in the city gradually forgot about them, as if they had never existed. On a mountain road, Fengjiu and the others, who had been walking leisurely for half a month, stopped and rested on the side of the road. The Million Buddhist sect was said to be in the westernmost place. Because their children were still young, they were not in a hurry to leave. Instead, they walked slowly as if they were on a scenic tour. Along the way, Fengjiu was cultivating. In half a month, she was about to break through the threshold and advance. One had to know that ever since her strength had regressed, she had been stagnant. Perhaps it was because her body and mind had relaxed during this period of time that her state of mind had changed. She had faintly touched the threshold. Drink some water. Xianyuan Mose handed her the water and said, "We have been away for a long time, so your diet is not as good as the one in the small house in the center of the lake. Why don't we find a place to rest for a few days and let you recuperate?" Hearing this, Fengzhou pursed her lips and smiled, saying, "I'm fine now. Qin Xian and the others made soup for me on the way." Chapter 38-81. Fengzhou smiled and casually said, "I didn't have enough rest on the road and I'm also carrying 2 children. Naturally, I'll be a bit skinnier. Don't worry. My body is very good and I know that my body's nutrition can't keep up." Seeing her like this, Xianyuan Mose paused for a moment and said, "How about you help the 2 children stop drinking milk? Just let them eat some porridge." Hearing this, Fengzhou burst out laughing. She glanced at him with a smile in her clear eyes and said, "It's only been 4 months. How can they stop? They'll be malnourished." As she said this, she reached out to hold his hand and smiled, all right. I'll drink more soup to nourish my body. How about this? I think this place is pretty good so I won't be leaving today. Let's rest here first and let Qin Xian and the rest make some delicious food." Xianyuan Mose looked around and saw that there was a grassland in front of them and a small river downhill. On the other side of the mountain road was a forest and there was no wind village in front or behind the road. He had no choice but to nod his head. "And, then let's rest here." As soon as he finished speaking, Fengzhou smiled and said to Ling Shuang, "Go and tell them to rest here tonight and let them prepare. Let Qin Xian prepare some stewed soup." Xianyuan Mose instructed. "Yes," Ling Shuang replied. She glanced at the 2 of them with a smile in her eyes. On the grassland, Hui Lang moved forward to look at the child in Du Fan's arms. Seeing that there was no cinnabar between her eyebrows, he said, "This isn't little you, I think it's better for me to hold little you, As he said this, he walked over to Luo Yu and stretched out his hand, Come, let me hold her and play with her." Hearing this, Luo Yu raised his eyebrows and looked at him, "Hui Lang, you're quite bold. You actually dare to play with little master." Hui Lang knew that he had misspoken. He smiled awkwardly and said, "It means to tease her for fun. That won't do. I just held him for a while. If you want to hold him, you should hold little Chen, Luo Yu turned sideways and avoided him, not letting him snatch the baby away. "Ai, it's not like you don't know. Every time I hug that little ancestor, he pees all over me. Little you, is still more obedient. I still want to hug little you, Hui Lang grinned and looked expectantly at the child in Luo Yu's arms who was blinking and giggling at him. "Look, little you, is smiling at me. She wants me to hug her too. Give it to me. Grey Wolf reached out his hand and looked at the tender little girl giggling at him. His heart almost melted when he saw the little girl's expression. "No." Luo Yu deliberately teased him. He carried the child and dodged again. "Little you, you also want Uncle Hui Lang to hug you, right?" Hui Lang moved forward and made faces to tease her. When he saw her giggling even more cheerfully, he couldn't help but giggle foolishly. Look, she wants me to hug her." Seeing this, Luo Yu smiled and handed the child to him. "I'll give it to you. But don't make her cry." I know. "Little you, won't cry," Hui Lang happily said. He carefully took the child and softly said, "Little you, quickly call me Uncle Hui Lang." Chapter 38-82. Seeing that they were carrying the child, Fengzhou said to Xianyuan Mose, "Let's go to the carriage. I'll help you massage the acupuncture points on your feet and move your muscles." "Okay." Xianyuan Mose responded and returned to the carriage with her. Outside, other than the 2 with the child, everyone else began to get busy. Some set up small tents, some picked up branches to start a fire, some went fishing, and some went to the small forest to look for game. As the sky gradually darkened, smoke rose in spirals, and the smell of food filled the air. At night, the child cried because of hunger. Fengjiu got up to feed him, and Xianyuan also got up to carry the other child. In the darkness of the night, the sound of the child crying was very clear on the mountain path. Gradually, the surrounding wind seemed to become stronger, whistling like the howling of ghosts and wolves. The people who were originally sleeping felt the sudden change in the atmosphere, and quickly got up to guard the carriage. Torches lit up the surroundings, but it was pitch black. There was nothing but an unusually strong night wind. Whoosh! There's something wrong with this wind. Hui Lang said as he swung his arms and stared at the surroundings. It's a Yin wind. Qi Kong stared at the darkness and said, it seems that this place is not very clean. Stay alert, don't let those dirty things startle the little masters. Du Fan said as he waved his hand and set up a barrier around the carriage. The children were different from them. It would be bad if they were accidentally startled. In the carriage, Fengjiu finished feeding one child and went to feed the other. She was not very worried about what was going on outside. After all, on this continent, there were very few people who could be Du Fan's opponents, whether it was cultivators or anything else. If anything happened, they could deal with it. Xianyuan looked at the child who was full, but blinked her eyes and stared at him. He couldn't help but smile. Look at our daughter, she's not sleeping even though she's full. She went to bed early today. She probably isn't sleepy anymore. Feng Jiu said with a smile. She looked at her daughter's bright eyes and her chubby cheeks. She was extremely adorable, just like a treasure. As the two people in the carriage were talking, Feng Jiu felt a murderous aura coming towards her. She frowned and hid the smile on her face. Before she could do anything, Xianyuan waved his hand and strengthened the enchantment around the carriage, isolating it from the outside aura and sound. Stay here with the child. I'll go out and take a look. As he spoke, he placed the child in his arms beside her and prepared to go outside to take a look. This was because the murderous aura he felt earlier was extraordinary, and it gave him a bad premonition. Fengjiu reached out to hold him back and said, let's wait for a moment. Let them try to deal with it first. Xianyuan paused, then said, with their strength, it won't be a problem for them to deal with strong cultivators. However, if it's against such a strong murderous aura, they're probably still lacking. His wife and child were here. If the murderous aura was too strong, it might hurt the child. Thus, he felt more at ease going out to take a look. Seeing this, Fengjiu paused for a moment and let go of his hand, saying, then be careful. Xianyuan pursed his lips and smiled, don't worry. With that, he got off the carriage first. Chapter 3883. They didn't see that after Qin Xian's body trembled at that moment, a trace of blood flashed across her eyes. In the howling baleful Yin wind, she suddenly raised her hand to grab Leng Hua beside her. She didn't have a weapon in her hand, but when she raised her finger, a wave of baleful Yin qi formed. Like a sharp object, she stabbed it at Leng Hua with a ruthless and murderous speed. Leng Hua only felt a gust of baleful Yin wind accompanied by a murderous intent. He instinctively looked to his side and saw her ferocious face filled with murderous intent. Her figure suddenly rushed towards him. He raised his hand to block, but unexpectedly, her strength was so great that he didn't notice it. His sleeve was torn by her fingers, and blood seeped out, dyeing the crescent moon robe red. Be careful. The surrounding people shouted as they rushed forward. However, Qin Xian's speed was even faster, especially when she was only a step away from Leng Hua. Just as her next attack was about to land on Leng Hua's heart, a powerful pressure abruptly gushed out, and with a swoosh, Qin Xian was sent flying. Bang! Ah! A shrill scream came out of Qin Xian's mouth, but it didn't sound like Qin Xian's usual voice. Hearing it, everyone felt their hair stand on end. Du Fan and the others looked back and saw Xianyuan Mose, who was originally in the carriage, sitting outside. His body was still surging with baleful yin qi. Everyone couldn't help but call out to him. Yama Lord! Xianyuan Mose flicked his sleeve and took out the wheelchair that he had put away in his space. He jumped into the air and sat on the wheelchair. His gaze swept past Du Fan and the others and fell on Qin Xian, who was lying on the ground and screaming. He said to them, "This is an extremely powerful baleful yin qi. Be careful not to be possessed by it." Hearing this, everyone's heart sank. They looked at Qin Xian with some worry. Yama Lord, Qin Xian is. The baleful yin has possessed her. At this moment, she is already being controlled. Xianyuan Mose said in a deep voice. He saw Leng Hua's face gradually turn pale, and he was on the verge of collapsing. Many, quickly help Leng Hua expel the yin qi from his body. Leng Shuang, protect them. Xianyuan Mose immediately said in a low voice, as he said to them, if you don't notice your injuries, if the baleful yin qi enters your body, it will become uncontrollable. Yes. Everyone responded at once. Many people quickly went up and brought Leng Hua to the back. Leng Hua looked worried as he came to their side and set up a barrier to protect them. Ah! Qin Xian, who was lying on the ground, screamed. She jumped up and rushed towards them again. Du Fan and the others were afraid that they would kill Qin Xian if they attacked too fiercely, so they didn't dare to use their full strength. But in this way, they were gradually put into a passive position. Here, the baleful yin qi in the air became more and more powerful. One of the baleful yin qi rose from the ground and pierced through the air like a cold sword. Its momentum was so strong that it had already surpassed Qin Xian's strength. They quickly dodged. Thinking that their master and the two little masters were still in the carriage, they gritted their teeth and said, no matter what. Let's capture her first. As soon as they finished speaking, several people surrounded her and attacked her fiercely. Under their siege, she was gradually at a disadvantage. Chapter 3884. Just as Du Fan couldn't bear the sharp pain and retreated, Qin Xian attacked him. Seeing this, Qi Kong and the others quickly attacked, but they were surrounded by a strong wind. The wind and sand rolled up, and they couldn't see what was in front of them. Xianyuan Mose, who was sitting in a wheelchair, had been watching quietly. When he saw that Qi Kong and the others were bound by the cold wind and Du Fan was in danger, he flicked his finger and a stream of air with a murderous aura attacked. Whoosh! Hiss! Ah! Qin Xian's knee was hit, and the pain seeped into her bones. It was so painful that she immediately knelt down. She turned her head abruptly, and a bloody light flashed in her eyes. She gritted her teeth and roared like a wild beast. Then she pounced on Xianyuan Mose. She leapt into the air with her body half bent, and her outstretched hand drew a sharp gust of wind in the air. However, before her attack could even get close, her entire body was sent flying by Xianyuan Mose. Bang! Ah! Her body fell heavily to the ground, and she spat out a mouthful of blood. She struggled to get up, but she felt a strong and suffocating aura coming at her. She held her head and screamed. She grabbed her hair with both hands and turned her head abruptly. Her blood-red eyes glared fiercely at Xianyuan Mose, and then she jumped into the small forest. Qin Xian. Everyone shouted and wanted to chase after her, but they heard Xianyuan Mose's voice. Wait! Xianyuan Mose looked at them and stopped them from following. He glanced at the small forest, and then looked at Du Fan. Du Fan, how are you? My divine sense is under attack. Du Fan's face was slightly pale. His condition was clearly not quite right. Xianyuan Mo's narrowed his eyes and said in a low voice, "This dark specter is extremely powerful. Its strength is not on par with yours. Furthermore, the smell of blood on its body is extremely strong. I reckon that its hands are stained with the blood of many people. Its attack is very effective, especially when it damages the consciousness. If something goes wrong, the consequences will be very serious." He paused and looked at him, saying, "Go and rest for a while. Adjust your aura and heal yourself so that you won't be injured." Du Fan originally wanted to say that there was no need, but his body felt increasingly unwell. Moreover, once his spiritual sense was injured, it could be either light or heavy. In the end, he still replied, "Yes." "Ya my lord, what about Qin Xian?" Fan Lin looked at him and asked worriedly, "Will she be okay? Will the Yin fiend kill her?" Feng Jiu lifted the curtain and got out of the carriage. Because of the enchantment and soundproof enchantment set up in the carriage, she did not know what was going on outside. However, when she came out and saw the situation, she knew that it was not good. Especially when she heard Fan Lin's words, she frowned. Since the Yin fiend has possessed her body, it will not kill her easily. Right now, she will be fine. However, after being possessed by the Yin fiend, her body will probably be very weak. Xianyuan Mo said. As soon as his voice fell, he seemed to sense something and turned to look at Fengjiu in the carriage. "Why did you come out?" "I was worried, so I came out to take a look." "What happened to Qin Xian?" Fengjiu asked. She got out of the carriage and walked towards him. When she saw that Leng Hua and Du Fan were both sitting on the ground and adjusting their breathing, she could not help but frown. Chapter 3885. Hearing this, Fengjiu looked at him and nodded, "Yes, no matter what, saving Qin Xian is the most important thing. Don't worry." Xianyuan Mo said and gestured for her to get into the carriage. After seeing her turn around and get into the carriage, he said to everyone, "I just said that this Yin Spectre's cultivation is on par with yours. If you fight it head-on, you will be slightly weaker than it. In addition, it is attached to Qin Xian's body, so you will be merciful. If you fight it head-on, you will not be able to gain the upper hand." Hearing this, everyone was silent and did not say a word. That's right, because the Yin Spectre was attached to Qin Xian's body, they did not dare to kill it. Moreover, the Yin Spectre was fatal to them, so if they fought it head-on, they would be at a disadvantage. "Master, according to your opinion, what should we do?" Hui Lang asked. "Since this thing has appeared here, then it must have a cave in the surroundings. Go and find where its cave is first, then come back and report. Remember, don't act rashly and alert it. If you encounter it, you must be 120% alert. If you are even the slightest bit careless, you will give the baleful Yin an opportunity to take advantage of." Hearing this, Hui Lang asked again, "Master, how can we find the Yin Spectre's acupoint?" "Where the Yin Qi gathers, it must be a place where there is little sunlight. The aura of resentment should be very strong. If you search according to these points, it should be in this small forest. As long as we find the Yin Spectre's acupoint, even if it escaped very far, it will appear in front of us." Xianyuan Mo said to them, "Qingqing, stay here. The rest of you go together. Be careful." "Yes." The few of them replied and glanced at Leng Hua and Du Fan who were sitting cross-legged and meditating. They said to Bai Qingqing, "Keep an eye on this place." "Yes, I will." Bai Qingqing replied and stood guard beside the carriage. Sitting in the wheelchair, Xianyuan Mo looked at the night sky above the forest and his expression became more and more serious. Bai Qingqing saw him staring at the top of the forest and asked, "Ya my lord, why is this evil spirit so powerful?" Xianyuan Mo glanced at her, and then shifted his gaze to the night sky above the little forest. He said, "That baleful Yin should have formed many years ago. It's so powerful because it feeds on the essence and blood of cultivators. His voice paused for a moment before he continued, moreover, the murderous aura and resentment above the small forest are soaring to the sky. Even if they go in, they might not be able to find the meridian point of the murderous aura. Then what should we do? Will they be in danger? Bai Qingqing asked. Xianyuan Mose pondered for a moment. He glanced at them, then went to the side of the carriage and lifted the curtain to look at Fengjiu and the two children inside. The two children refused to sleep and Fengjiu was coaxing them. When she saw Xianyuan Mose lift the curtain and look in, she asked, "What's wrong?" "I told Qi Kong and the others to go into the little forest to find the meridian point of the murderous aura. But when I looked up, I saw that the murderous aura and resentment in the sky above the little forest are alternating. I'm worried that they'll be in trouble if they go in." Hearing his words, Fengjiu smiled and said, "Then go in. I'll take care of the children. They'll be fine. We'll wait here for you to come out." "I'm worried." You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.